Bills today. Let's start with House Bill 233. It's a departmental bill. Mr. Donahue. Oh, Chair Casemeyer, good to see you.
Always a pleasure.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Ed Casemeyer. I'm chair of the IAC, and I have, as you probably know by now, the executive director of the IAC, Alex Donahue. House Bill 233 is a departmental bill. We appreciate your help putting it in.
Mr. Chairman, just hold on 1 second. I think we're having some technical difficulties with the stream, so.
Oh.
All right, for everyone online, we've started the hearing. We are hearing from IAC and former Budget and Tax Chair Ed Casemeyer. Welcome, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you again. Appreciate it. Nice to see you all. House Bill 233 is a departmental bill. I'll just tell you the three quick things it does. Alex will give you a more in-depth explanation. First, it increases the threshold of the estimating of cost projects, and the attempt here is to make the process quicker and more efficient for small projects that have been taking up too much time, didn't need that much inspection to be processed. The second makes the annual CIP process more efficient and less burdensome for local jurisdictions. And third, some of our regulations that have been on the books for a long while have increased the work for state agencies to have to review a lot of projects when that work really legally hasn't been necessary. So we'll do away with that need for them to do that work. So Alex will give you the nuts and bolts of those items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you so much for this opportunity to present the IAC's departmental bill. Mr. Chair, our commission is grateful for your sponsorship of the bill. I'd like to provide some context for it. For the 5 decades or so, the IAC was really first and foremost a grant management agency responsible for allocating and awarding the state school construction funding to school district projects. In 2018, the General Assembly passed the 21st Century School Facilities Act, which expanded the IAC's roles to include regular assessment of the condition of each facility, as well as expanded technical assistance to the school districts. The IAC has risen to meet the new requirements and obtained a hugely improved understanding of the needs, challenges, and opportunities facing the state when it comes to ensuring that every student has a safe, healthy, and educationally sufficient learning environment. Last month, I provided, at your request, a briefing to this committee on school facilities conditions and needs across the state and about the increasing costs of facility improvements and school construction. The data show that the cost has more than doubled in real terms over the last 2 decades, and Maryland faces an uphill battle in coming years in its quest to ensure educational sufficiency for every public school student in the state. Some of these provisions in law have been in place since well before these legislative developments and the increased challenges facing all of our school districts. So to help the IAC carry out its expanded mission, the Commission submits today and requests your support for the adjustments included in this bill. As Chair Casemeyer stated, the purpose is to better equip the IAC and 2 partner agencies, State Department of Education, Department of General Services, to carry out our respective responsibilities around school facility projects. And each of these changes either addresses an issue that has posed significant problems for one of the 3 agencies or corrects something that no longer works well due to changed circumstances. The Commission is very sensitive to the fiscal challenges facing our state. While these changes will improve efficiency for both school districts and state agencies, they're less about saving money and more about getting to a smoother, more efficient process so that school districts can get their projects reviewed, approved, and funded. The IAC is already operating on an extremely thin 1% overhead rate compared with the capital budget that we manage. It's far lower than the 5 to 12% typical for public and philanthropic grant management organizations. These changes further give the state a better chance at not losing the battle against the increasing costs of maintaining our schools. Now I'll pause to ask whether you'd like me to walk through briefly each of the 8 adjustments in the bill or to stand for questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First is a technical change to adjust due dates for IAC quarterly fiscal reports. Essentially, that gives us the time needed to compile and vet the data. The current dates in the statute require report submission on the last day of the quarter we're reporting on, which just doesn't really work. So this gives us the time we need to do the right vetting for accuracy on reports. Second item consolidates requirements of 2 statutes on reporting for alternative energy and solar in school facilities projects into 1 annual report rather than 2 for efficiency. Third, clarifies the annual reporting requirements on the IAC relating to its 2 distinct facility assessment programs. In a nutshell, the requirements for the maintenance effectiveness assessment and the condition assessment statewide have been jumbled into 1 statute and needed to be clarified and separated into 2 separate sections. This bill does that. Fourth, fifth, and sixth are policy clarifications. One is to update just technical terms on maximum state construction allocation to align with current practice. The second is to clarify the conditions that require LEA repayment of outstanding bond debt on a school facility once it's no longer in service. And then we move to the final ones, which are to improve interagency processes. First item, streamline the requirements for MSDE and DGS review of plans and specifications for projects. That one is a joint change requested by MSDE that the IAC is carrying because it's school facilities related. Second is a similar provision that is a request of DGS that the IAC is carrying for DGS, and it would clarify the conditions for DGS review of projects to align with the state superintendent's reviews and IAC practices. And then finally, the last one is to streamline the annual CIP process to eliminate the problematic high-cost, low-value December 75% round. And on that, we propose to offer the same information that is provided in that 75% round, but at 3 instances, November, December, and January reports. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. That great explanation. I would like to know from the perspective of our LEAs what the impact, if any, on them process-wise, and how you think these changes make it easier, harder, so forth. Thank you.
Sure. So we've been discussing with the Superintendent's Association, the Association of Boards of Ed, and Maryland Association of Counties, and they've provided input and feedback on these departmental provisions, and we have formulated, and we're working together now on a set of 4 or 5 amendments that would address their questions on, will this not just streamline, but will it make it any more difficult on requirements, some of which are, for example, thresholds where projects need to be reviewed by the state agencies if they're over currently $1 million. We're looking at bumping that up to a higher dollar amount, 1.25 million, for example, and same thing for change orders. Those we are in development now with, and we'll be bringing them to staff. We've started that process with budget and taxation on the cross file, so we'll be able to get that to you very shortly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that was sort of the line of questioning that I have. It looked like their 2 biggest concerns. One was that $1 million threshold, because there's a lot of HVAC systems that, I mean, it doesn't take much to get to $1 million anymore with the cost of construction. So hopefully you guys can work to some sort of compromise there. And then I guess the second was the reporting requirement, where it's currently 4 years, in this bill will make it 1. And maybe there's some sort of compromise in between because, yeah, I mean, to have to report every year, it does make things a little more difficult for them. So thank you.
Absolutely. And Mr. Chair, thank you. That's one of the amendments we're working on now, is to add language to specify that the LEA reporting is only once every 4 years. not every year. Obviously, if a LEA chooses to send us data in between the 4-year cycle, we're happy to take it and integrate it. We always have that opportunity available each year, but we'd only be asking for data on the set that we're visiting that 1 year, which is a quarter of the schools. Will do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Mayor Pat.
Good to see you too. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Mary Pat Fannin. I'm the Executive Director of the Public School Superintendents Association of Maryland. I'm here in strong support of the bill. I think any of us who suffered through the old begathon knows that any improvement to this process is very welcome, but there are some operational challenges as the bill has been written. So we've been working really closely with Alex, and in our testimony, we outlined sort of the 5 issues that are the most concerning, and I think we're reaching agreement on all of those. And again, this is all while battling, exponential construction costs, which you've heard about. Ms. Werner is on Zoom. She's one of our long-standing and expert facilities directors. She's going to talk about probably our most concerning issue is removing the 75% project approval in December and how that impacts our local budget planning. And one thing that came up that I didn't even really think about until last week is if you're a non-charter county and you have, as part of your bonding process, that you have to bring to the General Assembly and get approval, this is an important date for them to know where the state is in some of these capital plannings. So that's something that we knew was an issue for all county and school system budgets, but that's a very specific concern that could be complicated by getting rid of the date altogether. So we're happy to have more information. We just wanted to have it in the law.
Amendments, make sure council gets them.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Any questions? Okay, thanks for being with us. Have a good day. We do have a virtual witness. Suchicha, welcome.
Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Kaiser, members of the Appropriations Committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify on House Bill 233. My name is Shachita Warner. I'm Director of Planning and Construction for Calvert County Public Schools. I am here today to share the perspective of a local school system responsible for planning and delivering capital projects. I'd like to focus specifically on the provision in the bill that proposes removing the 75% CIP approval in Education Article 5304. For local education agencies, the IAC's 75% approval has long served as the first meaningful indication of the state's potential participation in a project. For decades, it's been a foundational planning tool, closely tied to county budgeting decisions and debt issuance. Historically, receiving 75% approval in December has signaled a high likelihood of final approval in the upcoming fiscal year, allowing school districts such as ourselves to bid and award projects in time for critical summer construction. And that is critical to keeping costs at least in line and inflation down as much as possible. In more recent years, the 75% round has also provided early feedback on project readiness or outstanding issues, and this has been appreciated. This advance notice has been essential in allowing us to either address concerns in time to remain eligible for state funding or to work with our county partners to develop contingency plans when funding barriers arise. We understand that the IAC is considering monthly reporting as a potential replacement to the 75% approval. Before eliminating a process so deeply embedded in both school system and county planning, we respectfully urge that a clear replacement timeline be established and that meaningful LEA input be incorporated into its development. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Okay, thanks so much for being with us. Have a great day. That concludes the bill hearing. We're going to now move to House Bill 337, Delegate Moon. And if you have a panel, go ahead and bring them up. If not, just you.
Here, they are welcome to join. They are not. Okay. It's just me. That's fine. Welcome, everybody. Delegate David Moon. I am here with I think, an important but pretty simple bill on school construction capacity. This bill does two things, and I want to just get to the heart of what's going on here. We've had reports now from the comptroller, MACO, folks from the beginning of the year have all been sounding the alarm bells that we don't have enough school construction dollars, and we certainly don't have enough to take care of all of the projects in queue, not in our lifetime, probably. That's a factual statement, and we probably don't have enough to get into just keeping basic repair and maintenance needs taken care of. We still don't have air conditioning in many facilities. We have mold problems in my county and throughout the state. You've heard all of this. And, you know, after I'm done speaking, I will actually pass out to you MACO's writings about how dire the school construction funding problem is. And I note that because they're here in opposition. They are opposed to this bill, but they are the ones talking about how we do not have money for school construction dollars. So I want to focus on one very simple aspect of this, how we have made a very crazy decision in Maryland to link school construction and alleged capacity issues to housing construction. And so now we have counties that shut down housing construction in their county if they are alleging that their schools are overcrowded. Now, last year I brought to you a bill that pointed out that many of these school districts have plenty of empty seats, and they are just not using them because they are making political decisions to not do boundary changes for the school districts. This is true in my county, where it was a huge raging battle and we still haven't fixed it. I saw these battles recently in Anne Arundel and Howard. County after county, you have empty seats not being used and counties running to the till for more and more capital dollars when they can't take care of basic maintenance, mold, and air conditioning. So I think we need to shut this practice down. It's a slow process where we need to encourage the counties to do this, and I'm starting real simple. So the bill does two things. One, it gives the IAC data to call foul and audit independently all of the school systems on their claims about their capacity, and it gives the IAC the ability not to do anything other than just fact check them. Are they in fact overcrowded, or do they have the ability to move people around to fulfill their needs? The second piece of it is a little more on the nose. It says in those counties that have decided to shut housing down because of alleged school capacity, and you have some counties where they can shut housing down indefinitely. In other counties, it's 4 years, 6 years, they just shut housing down completely. It would say, fine, if you're going to do that, you cannot stop site development plans from being from proceeding during the 4, 6, or whatever, however many years you've decided to shut housing down. Because otherwise, when those projects finally come up, they're not a 4-year delay, it's a 6-year delay. You're making that property owner start from point zero. So it adds a whole another year, 2 years, whatever, to get through site development beyond the housing moratorium. Frankly, I don't think we should allow these housing moratoria at all, but that will be a bill for another year. And just to give you a window into how that's been handled in my own county, they got rid of, we went into moratorium for housing in 2020 in Montgomery County, and the county shut it down. They immediately went and revised the law, and it changed it to simply have an impact fee collected in places where the sole reason for shutting housing down was alleged school capacity. And so you have to tell me, how many years does it take for a county to collect fees to get whatever, portables or extra capacity into a school system? This is not like sewer and water, where we actually have physical constraints. So that's the bill in a nutshell. And if you see fit to get this thing off the ground this year, I promise you in future years there will be additional iterations, because I think this problem is not going away. Yeah. Well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a statewide bill, right?
Yes.
All right. Why are we that concerned, from Western Maryland to Ocean City about, these concerns that you have? I mean, if I were to ask probably the average person who lives in Tacoma Park, Maryland, if they're that concerned about housing in Somerset County, I would say probably they're going to say, I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me. But as a representative of them, why does it matter to you what happens in Somerset County or Garrett County?
We have grant programs and tons of capital money piping out to all of the counties all of the time, and it's coming out of a common pool. We just don't have enough. One of the things that's galling to me is a few years ago, we actually allowed matching funds to go to counties that explicitly have extra seats available in the adjacent school. So when you start to see things like that happening, and then you have people crying that we don't have any capital dollars, I mean, something's got to give. And it's fine. We can make the decision that we're going to go ahead and subsidize every county's decision to waste resources, but I think we should be aware that that's what we're doing.
So is your answer to that question that if you take state money, which they're taxpayers too, if they take state money, then we want them to look like Tacoma Park? Is that what?
Whoa, no.
That's why I asked the question.
No, because this will play very differently in different jurisdictions. I mean, if you're in Frederick versus Garrett County, you might have very different situations. You have in Frederick probably booming school population, where this might be a legitimate policy question, but somewhere with shrinking population, it's not going to be the same thing.
Okay. Now, addressing two concerns that Mako had. Well, first, they were in a meeting this morning, and they understand that our school construction program is grossly underfunded. And certainly they would love to see more money be spent on school construction, first of all. But second of all, I think what their concern is they don't want to have mandates where they have very little control over the outcome. And so what I guess their first concern is that they have very limited, I'm reading right from their testimony, have little to no authority over school capacity planning. And the big one is redistricting decisions. So it's the school systems that have that, but yet the mandate is on the county government.
You can amend this bill to give the counties the power to compel redistricting or something like that. I mean, this is the problem. Basically, Mako is acknowledging that what I'm saying is true. They're just saying, well, the problem is we, the county councils or what have you, don't have the ability to redistrict our school boundaries. But that's fine. Are we to say that then the state should just be on the hook for whatever decisions come out of that county? That doesn't make any sense either.
So you want the counties to force their will upon the school boards to have that control?
I'd like someone to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, either the county, the state, or us through withholding grant funds. Somehow we need to get all of the counties to use their seats before asking for additional dollars. And they don't do it. They don't do it with regularity. And the counties that have done it have done minimal boundary changes that, again, continue to politicize. I get it. Parents, by and large, including parents in my district, they don't like the hassle of changed boundaries, and people, they think they've bought a house that comes with a school, right? There's lots of reasons that these politics happen. And so I get that. In fact, right now, there's a middle school closure very near me for redistribution reasons, and people are going nuts about it, right? But I say all this even as I'm going to take the brunt of hits for making this kind of a suggestion, but we've all got to own up to it because every one of our counties has this problem.
Well, this is more than just a suggestion. It's us changing the law.
He's suggesting it's us, but I think you.
Okay, this is a bill, Mr. Chairman.
You have a question?
My third question.
Last question. Third bite of the apple. Go ahead.
Well, this is why we're here, Mr. Chairman, to ask these questions. I mean, hopefully you'll give me the latitude. Thank you. So the third concern they have is the issue right now is housing, and the issue is affordable housing, and we're making the case that the reason why we don't have affordable housing because there's not enough available houses out there to keep up with demand. And so they're concerned that the bill would overwhelm local planning offices by forcing staff to spend time partially advancing projects that cannot proceed instead of prioritizing applications that are positioned for timely approval. I know that the governor, it's a priority for him to make sure that we can streamline these application processes. And it seems to me that if we move a bill like this, it's actually going to, and I agree with Mako, it's going to actually do the opposite. It's going to slow down.
Well, the only reason for that is because we're continuing to allow these housing moratoria to exist. The crux of the Mako argument on that point is, well, if this county is allowed to ban housing outright because of alleged school capacity, that project's never coming online, never. And actually, that's what I was trying to change last year. This is a softer version of the bill that would at least allow those property owners and developers who believe that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, if, say, they're in a county that doesn't have an indefinite ban on housing, that at least those projects could continue to proceed without delay.
But at the end of the day, don't you think the local people who live locally should decide how many and where houses are going and not politicians who live an hour and a half away? I mean,
You either look at the facts of the case. We're over 100,000 housing units short in the state. Every single poll for months now has suggested that whatever part of your state in, affordability is the #1 concern, and that housing costs, which is now 50% or more of people's monthly expenditures, is the #1 concern. So either we're doing something about it or we're not. Now, again, if there's a decision that it's more important to have the local concerns about whether, you know, all the kids in this school should go to that one or that one, I get that again, but that's contrary to us actually trying to do something about the housing shortage.
I mean, the locals could still make decisions, they just wouldn't get state dollars.
Well, that's where I think we should go with this. That was last year's bill.
Right.
I actually didn't write it this way. Again, this is a much softer bill. All it does is it gives the IAC data to audit the local school system's claims, and it doesn't do damage to the ban on housing, which again, I think is a crazy policy. That's a crazy policy to ban housing. But it doesn't do damage to that. It just says you can't hold up the site development in the meantime.
I mean, if we're spending state dollars, we should probably demand some accountability, some
I think so.
standards. And we already do. Delegate Stanko?
Chair, thanks for your time. I'm trying to think through this mechanically, and this just comes from time that this committee spent on last year with the Carroll County issue. Actually, the chair's original advice to me was to think through some of the redistricting framework for blueprint implementation. And I'm trying to get your thoughts on that a lot of our mid-sized counties, Carroll included, like the poverty in building looks different than what it would look like in Montgomery County, I would think. Like, so if our wealthier folks tend to live in more compact suburban districts, and our poorer folks tend to live in like urban farm areas, agriculture lands. And so when we looked at it, we did, because we were looking at everything before the chair came through before us. It would have been resulting in basically putting poor kids on a bus for an hour and a half to drive them down to wealthy areas, like just the way that the mechanics of the county and where the schools have historically been built, probably with poor foresight historically. So how does this bill like think through that where, or like what would that pull through be on the redistricting of making sure that the impact is allocated equally?
No, it's a fair question. And again, these are sort of the kinds of questions, if we get into next year and beyond and are really tackle this issue, I think there's a lot we can do here. When we did attempt a substantive crack at actually messing with the money, we excluded rural counties last year to a large degree. Again, just they have a very different situation. But there is a way of calculating functional adjacency when they are actually usable, right? Like you might have a waterway or something like that makes it actually not passable, even though as the crow flies, they're whatever, 6 blocks or something like that. But the IAC does have the ability to look at functional adjacency. Beyond that, you're raising some really political questions because, frankly, as we all know from our own communities, a lot of the segregation in the school boundaries is wealth is a wealth-driven thing, and people definitely pipe up when you talk about maybe the poor kids from this, five of the poor kids from here are going to go to that school with really wealthy families. That always causes consternation, but that's almost at the heart of what I think is problematic. Now, if there's a legitimate issue with the logistics, sure, but if there isn't,
Right, yeah,
I just think that kind of a thing is not really our problem when we don't have the money.
No, I hear you, and I'm just trying to think through it, again, Mr. Chair. I'm just thinking about it in not the way that you framed it, but the logistical aspect of, like, we have seats, but our seats are in areas that you end up in this kind of like alternative. If you think about like how Maryland policy has been created historically, it would actually like essentially do the opposite of what Maryland has done, which is that you'd end up putting the burden on poor kids. And I don't mean.
And certainly, if we,
3-5
again,
miles.
if we get down this road, we could make an exclusion for super long bus rides or something like that, right? But at least at a minimum, adjacent districts, adjacent schools, it's really, I mean, the chair of E&T lives in an area where his daughter is at an overcrowded elementary school that is literally next to one that has empty seats. And for whatever reason, the county's just not, and again, this replicates over and over again, just because the process of changing these boundaries is so arduous, tedious, and so seldom done and highly political. So I think we need to put our thumb on the scale.
That conversation reminds me a lot of last year, because that was the first conversation that started from where we were at, so I appreciate it.
Great. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Thanks for being with us. We do have a few other witnesses if you'd like to stick around. Mr. Enton, why don't you just come up, Mr. Enton, and let's get Mr. Donahue and Mr. Bridges. Are you testifying or are you just submitting written? Come on up.
Questions if you have them.
Just questions for you if we have them. Okay. Mr. Enton.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Robert Enton on behalf of the Maryland Building Industry Association. You have our letter of support for this legislation. I think the bill does two things. Number one, it calls for the collection of data. If we're going to base these decisions based on policy, we need the data to back up the decisions. So the first thing that this bill does is it calls for the collection of data. So if I'm a developer and I want to build someplace and I can go to look at this data, as can the state agency, and see just what's real about the student population as opposed to just the politics of it. What's real? So that's the first part of the bill that we think is a good part, an important part. The other part of the bill is to at least move the process along. Depending on the county that you're in, and you'll see an example in the written testimony that we have, you can be 6 to 8 years going through this process with the restrictions without being able to move. You do everything that you have to do. Your plans are approved, they're this, they're that, but then you're held up for years and years and years. And we think that at least this will make the process more efficient going forward. So, because, the day doesn't go by that you don't read in someplace, and whether it's the Washington Post, the Baltimore Sun, Maryland Matters, whatever, about housing is the #1 concern I think that we have right now in this state, is affordable housing. And we need to act to make sure that affordable housing is available. And this bill is a step in that direction, and that's why we support it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your testimony. Thanks for being with us. Any questions for Mr. Enton? Good to see you.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Any questions, informational purposes only for the IAC? Okay, that concludes the bill hearing. Delegate Boyce is with us. House Bill 854. And go ahead and bring your panel up. Yep.
Quickly, let's go.
Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Kaiser, and members of the Appropriations Committee. For the record, I am Regina T. Boyce, presenting HB 854, School Construction, Non-Public School Special Education School Renovation Program established. That is long, I'm sorry. Certainly across Maryland, students across the state have the ability to have their educational needs met through non-public special education schools when the public school system cannot meet their individualized education plan. While the Blueprint for Maryland's Future provides non-public special education schools with policy enhancements, as it did for public schools, non-public special education schools do not qualify for school construction funding through the Interagency Commission on School Construction. The bill creates a program administered by the Inter-Commission on School Constructions to provide grant funding to certain non-public special education schools for certain renovations and improvements to classrooms, upgrades to residential cottages on school grounds, health, safety, and accessible upgrades, infrastructure modernization, and certain new construction. As we've been looking at the bill, we believe that the bill was may have been misdrafted in that the bill's intention was to create eligibility for the IAC to be able to consider these non-public special education residential schools for school construction and funding. And so with that, I just want to say there are, I think the fiscal note talks about 13 schools. We think there may be about 5 or 6, the number isn't exact, about schools in the state that essentially are taking care of our public school students when they cannot meet, of course, their IEP. These schools, I believe, are doing a yeoman's job of providing the services those students need, but unfortunately are not in places where the facilities matches the quality of work. And so this bill simply does not mandate, but would allow these schools, a limited number of certainly, to be eligible to apply for school construction funding that would be, of course, again, at the ISC's determination to make. And with that, I would thank you for your consideration and urge a favorable report, and I will pass it on to my panel, if that's okay. Would you like to go next? Yes, please. Is that okay, Mr. Chair? Okay.
Good afternoon, and thank you, committee members, for this opportunity to speak on behalf of this bill. I am Brian Fracchia, the Executive Director of Nexus Woodburn Family Healing. As a residential treatment center, we are one of the highest levels of care for children in Maryland. We work with children who have suffered and are suffering devastating mental illness, having been the victims of horrific abuse and circumstances. On average, the youth that we serve at Nexus Woodburn have experienced at least 4 incidences of acute trauma in their young life before they come into treatment with us. This work, while rewarding, is incredibly challenging. Since 2016, 4 residential treatment centers have closed in Maryland, and we have moved from 10 to 6 RTCs able to provide treatment to the youth in Maryland. Each of us operates a licensed non-public school that provides full education services to our youth. Youth who have been homeless, often overlooked in the school system, and are looking for a future. For our youth, it can take us months to identify their past educational history, rebuild their transcript, help provide a 17-year-old freshman with hope that they too can graduate, and to show them that they have success in a school and that what they do actually has value. Given our specialty in emotional disabilities, we have also begun taking on youth within the community, giving this significant need for these children to also receive specialized education and therapeutic services. But looking at Nexus Woodburn Family Healing specifically, our school is over 100 years old. It was built in the 1920s to be an orphanage. The building is literally crumbling with exposed pipes and wiring, floors that are soft, and walls that are falling apart. Our championship basketball team plays in a gym without air conditioning, with a non-operational bathroom, and dead zones on the floor. No, that's not, though, why we win our games. We're a good team.
Thank you. You have to wrap it up. 2 minutes is up.
Oh, I apologize.
Go ahead and conclude.
We've had assessments of our facilities, and due to the age of the state of the building, they strongly recommend that we build and renovate our new building. However, there is no means for us to fund
Thank
this.
you. Thank you so much.
I apologize.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee, John Pica on behalf of Nexus Woodburn Family Center. A facility in the delegates district. These are students who need intensive behavioral services, and they also have 5 or 6 women who are victims of human trafficking. They offer a high school diploma. They're doing the work of the state, but unfortunately, they're not part of the system that improves the schools. I have visited this school along with a delegate from the 43rd District on many occasions. The paint is peeling. I don't think they've removed all the asbestos. I'm sure there's lead in the school. The roofs are leaking, and they are performing a function of the state of Maryland. We've tried to go through the CIP unsuccessfully. This school needs somewhere between $10 and $20 million in new building or repairs, and it's unfair. These kids would be students in a public school, except the schools can't handle them because of behavioral issues, and it's very unfair. The policy note, now there's a problem with the bill. The bill, and this might have been a miscommunication on our part, the bill, the policy note states that this asks for grants for operating funds. That's not the intent of the bill. The intent of the bill is to be in the school construction queue. It also states that 13 schools are affected. We think it's only 5, and of those 5, 2 are state schools. There are 2 RICA schools, and of the 3 remaining, probably only 2. Villa Maria, run by Catholic Charities, and the Woodburn Center. So we would hope that the committee would look seriously at the bill, and if we are supportive of an amendment that favors the Benedictine school. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. If the committee is going to look at this with a subcommittee or work group, we're more than happy to work with you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Agatha Callahan. I am the Director of Education at Villa Maria School, and it's been my honor and privilege to serve the children and families there for the past 25 years. I'm speaking on behalf of Catholic Charities in support of House Bill 854. 2 of our programs, the Villa Maria School and also our Villa Maria Type 3 diagnostic program, at St. Vincent's Villa, the residential treatment center on campus. We serve some of the youngest, most vulnerable children in the state of Maryland, ages or grades K through 8. They have significant, as you've heard, emotional, behavioral, and learning challenges, and 100% of them come from our local school systems. They are referred to us when it's been deemed that their needs exceed what can be supported in a public school setting. And what this bill would support is, one part is the physical aspect of that and what it takes to safely serve children with this level of intense, what we call pain-based behavior. It's aggression towards themselves, others. Some of our scariest moments are when children are in fight and flight mode and they're running towards a busy road. And until you've been there and had to reach and grab and pull them back, you don't know how important fencing is. So these are the kind of things we have to do that exceed what a public school would have to invest in their campus and their buildings, that we call them life safety measures. Safety is our top priority. Our facility, our school, and the residents require specialized doors, both internal and external. We have to have anti-ligature locks so that children can't hurt themselves with the doorknob on the interior. For our exterior, we have to have delayed egress doors, again, to give us more time to get to a child who's trying to run and hurt themselves. So all of this is very expensive to maintain. The wear and tear on the building itself, due to the level of aggression, even though we have the little kids, the babies, I can tell you they can break windows, they break doors. It happens every day in our building. So we definitely need to be updating and replacing.
Thank you. Thank you for the work that you do.
Oh,
Appreciate
I'm
it.
sorry.
It's okay. Thank you so much. Thanks for
Thank you.
being with us.
Yep.
Thanks for the work that you all do here.
Yep.
Alex, are you here? Can you come up just for informational? So from IAC, you weren't on the list here, but can we just ask, so these schools are not eligible for school construction dollars at all?
Currently, that's correct.
Got it. But any other questions for the panel? I mean, it does seem to me that these are, I mean, you know, there's probably an argument to be made for even charter schools, but certainly these kids who would be in the public school, right, and this is a service that these private facilities are providing the state, should be eligible. So despite the co-sponsor problem that you have, I think I'm for it. Delegate Grice.
I have a problem with the co-sponsor, but not the primary sponsor. No, I'm teasing. No, I guess my question, well, it's not even for Alex, more of a comment than anything, I guess. So in the past, these schools have been funded by public dollars, but it wasn't through the school construction program. It was usually through the miscellaneous section of the budget or through bond bills or something along those lines. So we have a history of funding them, but not probably the proper way, which is done through the school construction program. So, yeah.
Might tweak your bill a little, but I hope we'll get to where you want to be in the end.
I hope so, Mr. Chair and colleagues. Again, I think this is about, I think often we talk about public school dollars for public good. And I think with the exception of the fact that the physical buildings are not in the kind of state's purview or the local jurisdiction's purview, these are state students. These are students of the state. And so, for instance, like a Woodbourne Nexus, you know, I think the last time I was there was a gentleman who was going home after being there for about 6 months from Harford County, right? So you know, these schools take care of our public school students, and what we're just asking, not demanding, is that the facilities have the opportunity to apply for funding so that the facilities match the quality of education that they're given, that our public school system cannot, because we are in partnership. So we would love the opportunity to be considered. And so that's what we're hoping for.
I think we'll give you every consideration. And Delegate Grice is right. Have funded these on an ad hoc basis, and I know Delegate Grice has been a huge champion for Benedictine School over the years.
And I think
but we probably need a better system.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And fun fact, the Woodbourne Nexus School is the home of Enoch Pratt. It's his old home. And so so the campus is an example of a good facility that's a kind of a piece together. You got Enoch Pratt's home, and then you've got, you know, a building here, and then past buildings that were on that site. Beautiful wooded area, but would be a more beautiful rolling campus, but for the opportunity to do some significant upgrades. So thank you for the consideration.
Thanks for your advocacy. Thanks for bringing the bill.
Thank you.
If there are any other questions, we do have 2 other witnesses, so if you'd like to stick around, you're welcome to. Is Scott Evans and Bruce Beriano?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. My name is Scott Evans, and I am the CEO of the Benedictine School located in Ridgely in Caroline County. Benedictine is a non-public special education school and adult service provider for children and adults with developmental disabilities and autism. I want to begin by thanking this committee for your support of our previous capital request for Benedictine's new residential facility for our students who live on our main campus in Ridgely. I am here today in support of House Bill 854 with amendments. Non-public special education schools with a residential program support some of the most vulnerable Maryland public school students. Currently, Benedictine supports students with developmental disabilities and autism from 15 counties in Maryland. Benedictine receives its operational funding from multiple federal, state, and local sources, but this funding does not cover any capital improvements to our facilities. For that, we rely on fundraising, grants, and bond bill funding when available. There are limited, easy state processes to access the capital funds. And House Bill 854 establishes a vital mechanism to access much-needed capital funds for non-public special education schools. However, it is very limited in its scope and only applies to residential treatment centers attached to a non-public special education school. I'm here to respectfully request that House Bill 854 be amended to include licensed residential child care large group homes, which is our designation under DHS, connected with a non-public special education school. This change will allow non-public special education schools like Benedictine to be included in the proposed non-public special education school renovation program. There is one other minor amendment related to the issuance of the Maryland High School diploma. Most of our students, given their level of need, don't graduate with a diploma, but do graduate with a certificate of program completion. If amended, this bill could have a major impact on the lives of some of the most vulnerable students in Maryland and allow agencies like Benedictine to improve facilities to better meet their needs while not having to make difficult budget decisions around capital expenditures and facility improvements. This would also allow Benedictine and others to utilize fundraising dollars for program enhancements, expansion opportunities, and much-needed employee incentives. Thank you for your consideration. We'll take any questions.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, and members of the committee. For the record, Bruce Bariano, I'm here on behalf of Benedictine School. Just want to add, the students at the school are Marylanders. They are the children of Marylanders. We know our Constitution requires that there's a free public education for all Maryland children. I've been so privileged to represent Benedictine. If you tour the school, you will see how essential it is that they impact the lives of Marylanders. And as indicated, what you're talking about is so necessary. And all we're seeking is to be included. As Ms. Evans indicated, these are students from around 15 counties in the state. And this committee has been very, very good to Benedictine. And we are greatly appreciative in restructuring the buildings. And we just ask to be included in this program so that we can continue our efforts in an easier fashion. It's a very moving experience. It really is. And we really ask your support, favor the bill. I will be submitting the amendments in the formal way to the committee for their consideration. Thank you very much.
Benedictine uniform here with the.
Yeah.
What's it?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
House Bill 704, Delegate Plakovich-Carr. Welcome. And if you have a panel?
I do, Mr. Chair. They are welcome to join me too.
Yep, bring them up.
Good afternoon. For the record, I'm Delegate Julie Plakovich-Carr, here to present House Bill 704. This bill aims to feed more school students free breakfast and free lunch so that they can learn better. As a state, we are making important investments in our students and public education through the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. But those investments won't reach their full potential when kids are hungry in class. Decades of research show that hunger negatively affects student attendance, academic achievement, ability to focus, behavior, and mental health. Sadly, 1 in 6 Maryland children face hunger on a daily basis. When this committee heard this bill last year, I described it as expanding our ability to feed students free meals at school. Unfortunately, because of recent actions by the federal government, the $10 million annual appropriation mandated in this bill is unlikely to result in an expansion of the free school meals program. Instead, this legislation is much more likely to serve as a key defense to hold the line against childhood hunger. As this committee knows all too well, H.R. 1 made cuts to SNAP and Medicaid that will result in approximately 500,000 Marylanders losing access to these safety net programs. When families lose SNAP or Medicaid benefits, their children also lose direct certification for free school meals. That means they no longer automatically qualify to receive a free school meal. We've already seen tens of thousands of students statewide lose their direct certification since last school year, and that's before H.R. 1 has fully been implemented. It's not just the student and their family who is impacted. The loss of a student's direct certification also hurts their school's ability to qualify for federal funding for school meals. The Community Eligibility Provision, or CEP, is a federal program that allows high-poverty schools to serve free breakfast and lunch to all students, regardless of income. In Maryland, more than 700 public schools participate, feeding more than 390,000 students across the state. And these schools really are spread out across the state. Every single school district has at least some schools that participate. To qualify for CEP, 25% of the school's students must have direct certification. From the CEP perspective, it doesn't matter that a family who was kicked out of SNAP or Medicaid by the requirements of H.R. 1 is not actually any less poor. That family no longer counts towards their school's official rate of student poverty and therefore doesn't count towards federal funding eligibility. This puts some schools at risk of losing their CEP eligibility. To make matters worse, as a school's CEP eligible population declines, federal reimbursement rates for school meals also drop. So schools are losing real dollars, which may jeopardize their ability to continue these meal programs. And that undoubtedly will leave many more students hungry. I still believe that Maryland should be moving towards universal free school meals. We did it nationally during the pandemic, and 8 states currently have programs that provide free school meals to all of their students. But given the changing federal landscape, it is just as worthy of a goal for this year to preserve our existing school meal programs. The $10 million mandated appropriation in this bill would ensure that schools that are already feeding all of their students free meals can continue to do so in spite of the fallout of recent federal actions. Thank you for your consideration, and I thank the committee for what I know is a very heartfelt consideration of what's going on with the kids in our state and for looking out for them. Thank you.
Bringing the bill and all your advocacy. Let's just go down the line in testimony, and we'll take questions at the end, if that's okay, starting on my left, to your right.
Thank you, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Kaiser, and members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Ann Wallerstedt. I'm the Vice President of Government Relations and Strategic Initiatives at the Maryland Food Bank. So just want to set the stage pretty quickly for what we're looking at in terms of hunger and specifically child hunger in our state. Since 2019, childhood hunger has risen 12%. So that's really right before the pandemic. And that makes sense because families are still facing instability rates at about around 40%, financial instability that is, and we're still seeing hunger rates around 1 in 3 Marylanders, almost about 35%. We saw during the pandemic, as the sponsor noted, that all children got free meals in schools, every single one. And we saw childhood hunger be slashed in half immediately. Where I live in Montgomery County, lunch is about $2.80 for one meal. My daughter sitting behind me loves eating lunch. She loves eating lunch with her friends. And there's a certain dignity to that when every single person, every single child is having the same meal, having the ability to have the same meal. And that $2.80 every single day is meaningful for every family in the state. We know that financial instability is a root cause of hunger, and we know that this is a direct way to end childhood hunger, or at least slash it in half, because we did it 5 years ago. And we really feel that it's time at the Maryland Food Bank that Maryland should take steps in investing in doing this for all of our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Julia Gross, and I'm representing Maryland Hunger Solutions in support of this bill. We are a state SNAP outreach partner, and we do outreach to connect families with federal nutrition programs across the state. I've been in this role supporting our child nutrition work for 7 years, and I will say some of the hardest and most heartbreaking pieces of this work is when we encounter families who are struggling and desperate for a solution, but they don't qualify for anything. And that happens far too often in this state, despite the resources that we have here. There are so many families that live within the gaps of our federal nutrition programs and our federal support programs, and those gaps are widening. As Delegate Polakovich-Carr mentioned, there have been cuts to SNAP and Medicaid at the federal level. And while school meals were not directly included in that bill, cuts to SNAP and Medicaid are cuts to school meals. We are going to see those directly impact schools' abilities to serve meals, their ability to qualify for CEP, and their ability to receive adequate federal reimbursements for those meals. We have looked at the research. We have research from partners at our Johns Hopkins at Johns Hopkins who have shown that CEP does help to reduce food insecurity. Students in CEP schools are seen to have almost 3 times less likelihood of experiencing food insecurity at home when compared to similar schools that are not participating in CEP. We've come a long way in Maryland in adopting this provision, and we have a lot to protect, but that also means we have a lot to lose, which is why we are very supportive of the provisions in this bill to provide financial support to schools to maintain their universal meal programs wherever possible. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Vice Chair and members of the committee. My name is Laura Hale. I'm the Director of Government Relations with the American Heart Association. Oftentimes when I sit here talking about school meals, people say, well, why does the Heart Association care about school meals? And it really comes down to, for us, that school meals are one of the most nutritious meals that most kids get in a day. And making sure that every child in Maryland can have that healthy, balanced lunch and breakfast makes a very important step for the whole health of our children. We know that this as well is a protective factor for our families and making sure that they do not slip further into poverty. And as the cost of meals and other things go up, by being able to protect school meals, we are helping our families across the state. Another really just important thing to note when you invest in school meals, you're investing also in the largest restaurant in the state of Maryland. If you think about our schools, they buy from our Maryland farmers, they buy from Maryland businesses, and by making this investment, not only are you helping kids and helping families be healthy, but you're also investing in other businesses across the state. And so we ask for your favorable report on this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Barnes, Vice Chair Kaiser, and members of the committee. My name is Paige Racine. I'm a student at the University of Maryland and an intern here at the Maryland General Assembly. While I'm here in a personal capacity to express my strong support for HB 704 and to share my experience as a graduate of Cecil County Public Schools, in the interest of full transparency, I am currently interning for Delegate Polakovich-Carr. Her work on this issue is a big part of the reason why I was interested in working for her office. From the first year of middle school to my final year of high school, I was in the same building with most of the same people, but my junior year was unique in 2 respects. It was the first time my school was enrolled in the CEP program, and it was the first year since the 6th grade that one of my best friends was able to eat lunch at school. Despite easily qualifying, his parents never filled out the necessary forms for free lunch, and as a result, the only way he was able to have anything to eat was to walk the cafeteria and ask around to see if anybody had leftovers that they were willing to share. He tried to play it off. It was a routine. He would stand up, he would make a joke about panhandling, and then he would leave our table to go scrounge for food. But we went to a very small school, and it was easy to see that it was embarrassing for everyone to know that his family could not afford to buy lunch. His experience was not unique. I distinctly remember noticing how many more of my peers were eating breakfast and lunch when it became available to all students at no cost. And while I typically brought my own lunch to school, if I had forgotten my food from home, I was able to quickly receive a lunch without having to worry about the amount of money in my account, where ordinarily I would have to either call home and ask my parents to deposit money or just go hungry. I want to reiterate how quick and simple the CEP program made receiving school meals. People received their lunches much quicker without having to worry about prices or account balances, and free breakfast meant that those who had a late lunch period did not have to wait until 1 p.m. for their first meal of the day. And because everyone had access to the same meal, there was no stigma for those who qualified for free and reduced price lunches, and parents did not have to fill out invasive forms so their children were able to eat with their friends. School is difficult enough on its own. Maryland students do not need hunger as an additional obstacle to successful learning. HB 704 will allow students to focus more on their academics and less on where their next meal will come from. Thank you for the opportunity to express my strong support, and I once again urge you to support this essential legislation.
Thank you. Thanks for your advocacy, everyone at the table. Questions for the bill sponsor or the panel? Well, thanks for keeping this to our bill sponsor. Oh, I'm sorry, and I forgot to introduce Delegate Pasteur is here from Ways and Means, and Delegate Hornberger is here as well. Delegate Pasteur.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me.
Will you explain, please, why it is that previous to CEP, we were using farms free and reduced, but in the controversy or the discussions about farms versus CEP, because farms was less expensive, it was thought that it turned out that CEP found that there were more children than we thought using farms who hit that poverty level?
That's a great question, thank you. So yes, traditionally schools use free and reduced price meal applications to collect that poverty data and identify students who are eligible for free and reduced price meals. Direct certification has always been a piece of that. When direct certification in Maryland was used prior to 2023, it included SNAP data. It also included categorical eligibility, so students who are identified as experiencing homelessness or in foster care or migrant. In 2023, the numbers jumped, which I think is what you're referring to, where we identified over 110,000 additional students. That was when Maryland started using Medicaid data to add to the direct certification level. And that really has been a game changer in terms of identifying students who are qualified for free and reduced price meals, but also allowing much more schools to opt into CEP. We saw our CEP numbers almost double the next year. We went from around 350 to 650 schools after we adopted Medicaid direct certification.
Thank you. May I ask one more question? Okay. You talked more about poverty and what it did to sort of curtail that. Do you have any data, any information to support that CEP is related to some of the rises in the success levels of children who have been in many of these impoverished areas? And explain why you think that is?
I mean, generally looking at the numbers and what we've seen from the data is that schools, when kids get fed consistently, we see better kids' attendance, doing better in school, and generally just, I don't know about you all, but I do a lot better when I've actually had lunch at being able to focus throughout the day. But the data does bear that out. It's not specific to just the new schools on CEP, but we have it very generally on kids getting fed equals better academic outcomes, equals better attendance, equals a better, happier student at the end of the day.
Thank you.
It's sort of intuitive if you're human, I think, to know that if you eat, you're probably going to learn better. Any other questions? Delegate Acevedo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Delegate Blackledge, for bringing this bill back. Certainly, I'm happy to be a co-sponsor. I have a quick question, because in the bill, there is a mandated $10 million spending. And in an ideal world, we would be able to allocate that $10 million so all of our kids are able to have free, nutritious meals when in school. But as you know, I mean, in our own county, I think a donor recently paid off some lunch debt from in our own school system for 82,000 students. And despite doing that, there is still a $1.36 million lunch debt in Montgomery County Public Schools. So the highest we've seen in terms of like a donation, and we still have 1.36 million in school lunch debt. I would love to see this pass this year, right? 10 million is quite a bit of a price tag, but I think our kids are worth it. Any consideration, you know, given to our regressive tax code, I think we're 41st in the nation, and tying that to making sure that we have the resources necessary to ensure our kids have free and nutritious meal while in school. So you not only have the 10 million, but you're able to pay off the lunch debt that already exists. And if it's 1.3 million in Montgomery County, I could only imagine what it is in other jurisdictions. Any thoughts on that?
Thank you, Delegate, for the question and for your co-sponsorship on the bill. I mean, you are right, 10 million does not cover the need across the state. And we know that this bill, although this is the second year it's been in appropriations, has previously been assigned to the Ways and Means Committee for multiple years. And when it was then truly a universal free school meal bill statewide, I think the price tag was maybe about $189 million was what it would be for statewide. So the last year we decided to come back with a different strategy to try to actually get something done that might actually be manageable to fit into a budget, recognizing last year and this year have been very challenging fiscal years. There was legislation considered in the Ways and Means Committee last year by Delegate Shetty to provide a dedicated funding source for this program and for some other essential safety net programs. But I think you're right that we should keep pushing on that front and looking for other ways to have a dedicated fund to get to that universal goal.
Thank you, Delegate. Any money you raise over there, we'll take. No, I do think that we really have to be looking long-term at a universal program. And, perhaps with next year having the audit come back on the blueprint and knowing that we're going to have to take some look at the sort of blueprint program generally, this is something that should be part of the conversation as well. So,
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing the bill and keeping it on our minds. Any other questions? Ways and Means, thanks for joining us. All right, let's see. Oh, we have another, Dr. Coleman on virtual online. Dr. Coleman, welcome, you're on. Any other questions? Ways and Means, thanks for joining us. If you have your YouTube on, you want to turn that off, and you are on with us, ready to go.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chairman Barnes and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 704 and Senate Bill 586. My name is Sharaska Coleman, and I have the privilege of serving as the Chief Operating Officer for the Prince George's County Public School System. At its core, this legislation is about dignity. It is about ensuring that no children sit in classrooms distracted by hunger, worried about whether their lunch account has a negative balance, or feeling singled out because their family is struggling. Today, 136 Prince George's County Public Schools participate in the federal Community Eligibility Provision, allowing students to eat breakfast and lunch at no cost. But too many schools remain excluded, not because the need isn't there, but because the financial math simply does not work. These bills close that gap by covering the difference between federal reimbursement rates, making universal meals financially sustainable. The impact is immediate and empathetic. It means fewer children carrying the invisible weight of meal debt. It means principals can invest scarce resources in instruction instead of unpaid lunch balances. And at a time when our school district faces a projected $150 million budget gap, it provides critical stability so we can protect what matters most, teaching and learning. To be clear, a culture of academic acceleration cannot exist where hunger persists. Nutrition is not a luxury. It is infrastructure for learning. When students are well fed, they are more focused, more engaged, and more prepared to succeed. This legislation represents a smart, compassionate investment in Maryland's future. By committing $10 million beginning in fiscal year 2028, the state ensures we fully leverage federal resources while meeting the basic needs of our students. When we remove hunger from the equation, we give every child a fair chance to thrive. Prince George's County Public Schools respectfully urges a favorable outcome for House Bill 704 and Senate Bill 586. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thanks for your service. Nice to see you. Any questions for Dr. Coleman? All right. Thanks for being with us. Have a great day.
You too.
That concludes the bill hearing, and now we will move to Delegate 192, Delegate Woods. Hey, Delegate.
Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Kaiser, and esteemed members of the Appropriations Committee. For the record, I am Delegate Jamila Woods, and I'm here today to request a favorable report on House Bill 192, legislation concerning religious educational institutions and the certificate of approval process under the Maryland Higher Education Commission. House Bill 192 addresses a narrow but significant regulatory conflict that has existed since statutory changes in 2013. Prior to the 2013 statutory change, Maryland recognized the distinct role of religious educational institutions and allowed qualifying institutions operating exclusively for religious education and ministry to function under a religious exemption without undergoing the full certificate of approval process. After the 2013 changes, institutions seeking to maintain both religious exemption status and accreditation recognized by the United States Department of Education were required to complete a two-stage certification of approval process. The process includes a substantial application fee, documentation required, on-site visits, and structural standards that were designed for large non-religious institutions. For small faith-based colleges serving limited populations, those requirements have proven to be financially and operationally unworkable. This has created an unintended regulatory conflict and consequence. To maintain a religious exemption under Maryland law, an institution must provide exclusively sectarian instruction. However, accrediting bodies recognized by the federal government often require general education components such as English or mathematics. Institutions attempting to meet accreditation standard risk losing Institutions attempting to meet accreditation standards risk losing their exemption, while institutions attempting to preserve their exemption cannot satisfy acceleration requirements, and as a result, they're effectively trapped between two conflicting regulatory pathways. House Bill 192 restores clarity. It allows qualifying religious institutions that are accredited by a federally recognized accrediting body to operate without duplicative state certification, provided they meet the strict statutory criteria already outlined in law. Those criteria remain intact. Institutions must be established for religious purposes, offering programs solely for religious vocations, and clearly identify the religious nature of their degrees. This bill does not create a broad deregulation. It is narrowly tailored and impacts only a number of longstanding institutions authorized to operate in Maryland prior to the statutory changes and serve exclusively religious educational functions. The intent is not to weaken oversight, but to correct a conflict that has already forced some institutions to close and threatens others with similar outcomes. Maple Springs Baptist Bible College and Seminary has operated for decades, serving adult learners and working professionals seeking theological education. Following the 2013 changes, it received a cease and desist order because it could no longer reconcile the accreditation standards with the religious exemption framework. House Bill 192 provides a path forward so that similarly situated valuable institutions like this are not placed in that position. Maryland has long balanced appropriate higher education oversight with respect for religious liberty. House Bill 192 preserves that balance. It removes redundant administrative burdens that do not enhance consumer protection while maintaining clear statutory guardrails around what qualifies as a religious educational institution. For these reasons, I respectfully urge the committee to issue a favorable report on House Bill 192. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I believe that we have President Bell and Tamara Davis Brown here also to testify virtually. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us. Is this your first time in appropriations?
I believe it is.
All right. Well, first time in appropriations. Are there any questions, members of the committee? Oh, no. That's a lot of questions.
I surrender.
That's a lot of questions. That was really great testimony. Thank you for the bill. Any actual questions for the delegate? Well, you answered them all with that great testimony. Good to see you.
Thank you, sir.
We do have two online witnesses if you want to stick around.
Yes.
Tamara Davis Brown, welcome, and we'll start with you.
Can we flip it and start with President Ball because he can
Sure,
give more, if
Mr.
you don't
President,
mind,
we'll
sir.
start with you. Yeah, you're already on. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Good afternoon. Certainly thanks, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Kaiser, and certainly to our friend Delegate Woods. Thank you so much for your passionate testimony as well. I am Marquez Ball. I'm honored to serve as the president of Maple Springs Baptist Bible College and Seminary. I want to share that I attended Maple Springs while a young man in the United States Air Force. I was able to leverage what was called at the time a top-up program and attend Maple Springs because it was an evening institution. Since attending Maple Springs, I was able to go on to Howard University for a master's and then to Southern Seminary in Kentucky for a doctorate. And so I am a product of Maple Springs Baptist Bible College and Seminary. Not only am I a product, but I am able to see so many others who've graduated to go on to be pastors, to serve as religious leaders and counselors. And these products of Maple Springs Baptist Bible College and Seminary step up when there is a need in the community. So for example, when there is a government shutdown and there's food programs, those kind of programs are hosted by alumni of Maple Springs Baptist Bible College and Seminary. As you just heard, the 2013 change brought about a major challenge for our institution and institutions like it. Maple Springs Baptist Bible College and Seminary then noticed that we were, in essence, shrinking. This was choking the life out of us. We did as much as we could to meet the hurdle of state certification, but because we're a small evening institution, it was too much of a hurdle for us to meet, and it became a challenge also for accrediting agencies because they now require that state certification. I've attached in my written testimony a spider map that basically describes how these changes have impacted us. And so my simple ask is indeed that you all support this bill and support us in making sure we're able to serve those who are seeking religious education here in the state of Maryland.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Thanks for being with us.
Yes.
Ms. Brown, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Chair Barnes and Vice Chair Kaiser, and I want to thank our sponsor, Delegate Woods. Again, I am Tamara Davis Brown. I am chair of the Board of Trustees for Maple Springs Baptist Bible College and Seminary, and I won't take up much of your time. I'm really here to help field any questions, but I think our sponsor, Delegate Woods, explained the situation quite clearly and distinctly. The only thing that I will add is she is correct. This is a narrowly tailored piece of legislation to our knowledge from Maryland, from MHAC, the Maryland Higher Education Commission. Only 9 institutions and now maybe 8 because Washington Bible College, which was a very prominent Bible College here in the Washington, D.C. area, closed as a result of the 2013 Act. And again, we don't want to experience a similar fate. So we favorably we ask that this committee favorably move this bill out of committee. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for being with us. Any questions for either of our virtual witnesses? I don't see anything. Thank you both for being with us. Delegate Woods, good to see you.
You
Thanks for the
also.
bill.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for the bill hearing. We'll now move to Delegate Griffith. Yeah. House Bill 76. And it looks like Mark Fox is here as well. If he is with you, he can come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, thank you, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Kaiser. Congratulations again. And members of the committee, for the record, my name is Delegate Mike Griffith. I respectfully request a favorable report on HB 76, local school systems, school safety grant alterations. It's a straightforward bill that will allow local education agencies to reapply within the same fiscal year for additional funding to the Safe Schools funds, administered by the Maryland Center for School Safety. To qualify, an LEA must fully expend its initial grant allocation and demonstrate a continued need for additional funding within that same fiscal year. Approval of a second allocation would remain at the discretion of MCSS, which is best positioned to evaluate the availability and appropriate distribution of remaining funds. Only 19% of Maryland schools have security personnel in the schools, keeping the students safe. We've discussed multiple times on this bill. We've had it for a couple of years now about the relationships between the security personnel with students, with special needs individuals, especially a situation we had in Harford County. We had a school resource officer in that case. There was a young autistic boy who eloped, ran into a freezing storm water pond. Fortunately, the school resource officer in this case had a relationship with the child, knew the individual had a tendency to elope, ran out with all disregard for his own safety in full gear, dove in, saved the kid's life. That kid would be dead. But for that school resource officer in this case, and the knowledge knowing that this individual had special needs. And that's the unique relationship between these security officers and the student body is in some cases, if you had outside law enforcement come into a disturbance with, say, an autistic kid, they may not know that kid has special needs and may be acting out, acting in a way typical to that child. But that school resource officer or security officer within the school knows these children, knows their tendencies, and understands what they're dealing with and will not overreact and cause further tragedy. So this is a relationship-based program, and all this does is allow folks who are using these programs to get a second bite of the apple if they use their funds. And with that, I request a favorable report.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today in strong support of Maryland House Bill 76. My name is Mark Fox, and I serve as the Division Commander of the Community Services Division for Harford County Sheriff's Office, the division responsible for overseeing our school resource officer program. The Harford County Sheriff's Office School Policing Unit plays a vital role in keeping our schools safe, supportive, and focused on learning. Our school resource deputies are more than law enforcement officers. They are mentors, educators, and trusted adults who build strong relationships with students, staff, and families. Those relationships are critical in identifying concerns early, preventing incidents, and responding effectively when challenges arise. In Harford County, we are proud that school resource officers are assigned to all high school and middle schools outside of the incorporated areas. However, at the elementary school level, only 4 deputies are responsible for covering 24 public schools. While they work tirelessly, limited staffing makes it impossible to provide a consistent daily presence in every building. As student enrollment grows and needs become more complex, the demand for prevention-based programming, threat assessment collaboration, and mentorship continues to increase. House Bill 76 provides a responsible and practical solution. Importantly, this legislation would allow jurisdictions like Harford County to utilize already allocated state funds that are currently going unused by other jurisdictions. Rather than allowing those resources to remain idle, House Bill 76 ensures that they can be redirected to communities that are prepared to implement and expand effective school safety programs immediately. Passage of House Bill 76 would move us closer to the goal of assigning a dedicated school resource officer to every public school in Harford County. This is not simply an investment in law enforcement. It is an investment in prevention, student well-being, and community safety. It maximizes existing resources while strengthening our ability to protect Maryland students. For these reasons, I respectfully urge your favorable consideration of House Bill 76. Thank you for your time and your commitment to our schools.
Any questions for Deputy Sheriff or Delegate Tolles?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple, well, maybe 1 or 2 questions. I think it's commendable legislation, but do we want school resource officers, essentially police officers in elementary schools?
Well, let me actually address that. You may not be aware of this. Most people aren't. So when I was in the Marine Corps, I was a military policeman. In 2000, I was certified for the Virginia State Police as a DARE officer. And I served as a DARE officer on the base schools at Marine Corps Base Quantico. So these security officers, SROs in elementary schools, play a very, very different role in that environment than they would in some high schools, right? So it's much more of a relationship building, a trust building, because those, elementary school kids aren't committing crimes, right? But those relationships being built with law enforcement, trusting them, and that trust going back and forth is an important first step in forming those relationships and understanding the rest of their lives.
Okay, Mr. Chair, a follow-up, please? Two follow-ups, sorry. Thank you. So in the example that you gave, that the autistic child gravitated toward water, isn't it the fact that autistic children will gravitate toward water and that schools should have been paying attention to that child and should not have been allowed to get out, therefore not necessarily needing a resource officer, but needing someone to ensure that autistic child does not leave the school grounds? So I think it's kind of misleading.
Well, let me speak to that. So also, I have a severely autistic 11-year-old son, and who also has a history of elopement, right? And I have built my house like a fortress, not to keep people out, but to keep him in.
Sure.
So the amount of work a school would have to invest to make sure a kid could not just fly out the door, because I've chased a very fast autistic kid down the road, right? Those kids are fast when they want to go somewhere. And we know drowning is the #1 cause of death for autistic children for that reason.
You know that from my swim bill.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, from my, from my experience too, right? So with that being said, you'd have to make these schools an absolute fortress, and you'd have to have one-on-one attention to these kids 24/7 to prevent all these incidents. And it only takes one for it to be a tragedy. Unfortunately, we were able to prevent that one.
Well, thank God you were able to prevent that. And I was wondering, do you actually need school resource officers, or do you need some type of other assistance, some nurses or some other assistance, so, ensure that that we are monitoring our children who need them the most?
Yes.
Yes, right, so I agree. So we agree on that. And so I just wanted to know if you could answer the opposition testimony from Strong Schools in Maryland, who indicates that, that there's no, evidence base where school systems offer, safety strategies. Just kind of, I don't want to give the whole testimony because colleagues have it, but if you could talk about this letter, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's from Strong Schools in opposition.
Listen, I understand people's concerns, and I respect their position, but the General Assembly just a few years ago decided this was a good program, which is why this program is currently in place. And there's a lot of very intelligent and thoughtful people in this body who came to the decision to create this fund in the first place. And I think that I gave you one example, and we saved one kid's life as a result of it. And we know other kids have been saved too, and we can dismiss it as being, or someone could dismiss it as being anecdotal, but that kid's family doesn't.
Sure, and that's why I think we need nurses, because I just want to make sure
And I guess my response to that is, would the nurse be willing to go and be legally able to go in and dive in that ice-cold water to try to save that kid's life? That's not a criticism of the nurse, but law enforcement, their job is to risk their lives to save others.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing the bill. I appreciate the work that you've been doing on this over the years. Kudos to you. I do respectfully disagree on the solution here, but I did just want to mention that my question is for the sheriff who's with you today. And again, I appreciate the service that you do for the people of Maryland and for Harford County, I believe.
Sir.
My question, I was looking at the oath of office that you all take. It says, according to the Constitution and laws of this state. And my question to you is, if there are laws that you think that if we were to pass a law from the state level, that you wouldn't have to abide by it?
That's a very weighted question that you asked there, sir. From my position, the way I look at that is, if a law is passed, it is our responsibility to follow up with that, on that law, and to enforce that law. Now, what different elected officials in higher positions than me may say, I can't speak on that, but from my opinion is, if a law is passed, it is our position to enforce.
You're not
that.
the sheriff of Harford
Right.
County.
Yes, that's it.
Right, you're the school resource officer coordinator
Yes,
for
sir.
Harford County. So you're not setting policy for the department?
No, not at all, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I was just asking, we're here discussing a piece of legislation. I just wanted to make sure that if we passed it, you would abide by it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Doug Graced.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think this is less about the students, and I agree with Delegate Griffith that it's also about building trust among the students, and that's a big part of community policing. But this is more about the grown-ups. I mean, are there situations where you have like custody battles between two parents who don't live together that then they'll take it out potentially in school? Do you have a situation where you have angry parents who were just so mad at like a teacher because of something that they did and an adult comes in and you guys are trained to de-escalate those situations, or even worse, and this has happened. I think that if we ever have, a school shooter, that I don't think they discriminate whether it's a high school or would you agree that we'd probably rather have a trained law enforcement officer and have to deal with that situation than an untrained teacher or administrator in that potential situation?
I mean, I think it raises an excellent point, right? Because, these security personnel in these schools, it's the children, it's the teachers, it's the faculty, it's the staff. Remember, this was enacted in response to a mass school shooting here in the state of Maryland, right? These incidents that happen in the community can spill into schools. This gets I think, unfortunately, this gets mischaracterized as school policing. I disagree with that assessment. There's a security aspect, there's a relationship aspect, but it's not just trying to deal with disruptive children. It's to protect the schools. And sometimes it's protecting teachers from students. So it's multi-layered, multifaceted, and unfortunately it gets pigeonholed sometimes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Griffith, good to see you. I'm just curious, on the SROs, school resource officers, or as Delegate Tolles had alluded to, police officers. I guess what I'm trying to understand is what does SROs do that we don't already have school staff and administrators who are doing, who aren't being paid for it, who aren't receiving any special compensation? Right? You talk about mentorship. There are school staff that provide mentorship that they aren't paid for. Talk about behavioral issues, or behavioral specialists that we could hire if we were to allocate the funds for it, et cetera. So I guess what I'm trying to understand, because every time I hear an argument for more police in schools, is the value that SROs bring, and you list those stuff, and every single item that I hear folks mentioning are things that a school coach does, that a staffer does, but they're not being compensated for it, right? So why spend more money to expand more police in schools when we could be compensating the folks who are already doing this work out of the goodness of their heart and aren't being compensated for it?
I'm super excited you asked that question, Delegate. So first and foremost, this bill does not expand funding whatsoever. It just allows jurisdictions to have a second bite of the apple on the funding. But more importantly, one of the conversations we've had here, and it's been a thoughtful conversation in my time here in Annapolis, is distrust between the community and law enforcement. No one else in a school can help build that trust other than law enforcement and community members, right? A nurse, a teacher can't help build that trust, familiarity with those relationships. So that's one. Teachers right now, are worried about breaking up fights between kids, restraint, those things, right? So we don't want to put teachers and school staff in harm's way in those situations. And those are just two right off the top of my head. So no one else can serve those roles right now than law enforcement or security officers. Sheriff?
No, and I definitely agree with what Delegate Griffith just said. And ultimately, the one thing, I think a lot of this legislation, why it's been passed as far as having school resource officers, is ultimately to protect our student body and our teachers. I agree with you. A lot of what a school resource officer does is also done by other members of the staff. However, if we have that incident that we've had across our nation and even in our own state, where you have a gunman that walks into a school looking to harm members of that school body, that law enforcement officer is specially trained and in the best position to protect those students, those staff within that building. And ultimately, we act as a resource. I mean, it's not like our school resource officers are walking around and patrolling, like grabbing kids up. We We allow the administration to run their schools. We only step in when asked or requested to, help in a given situation. But ultimately, I think of my own children when they are in school, it gives me somewhat of a better feeling, should someone come into that building with ill intent, there's a professional that's been trained to deal with that individual there at that school.
And Mr. Chair, and I appreciate that. I think we should all be thinking of all of our kids, whenever we have this conversation. I keep reminding folks, we should be interested in keeping all of our kids safe and not some. And what worries me is the data that shows SROs or police in schools and the disproportionate impact that it has on Black and Latino students. I'll just share one quick example and I'll end this. In my own county, the Office of Legislative Oversight did a report that showed the negative impacts of law enforcement in school, SROs, in school, and we took action. That led the community coming together to put forward a solution called Dads on Duty. I encourage everyone to look it up, but these are fathers who are essentially showing up in schools in my district, patrolling schools, working with school administration to find a time to show up at school, check in with children, et cetera. And what that led to was not just less school fights, less intervention by outside of law enforcement, SROs, school security staff, but we saw a difference in school behavior. I encourage everyone to look it up. Again, it's called Dads on Duty. And the idea behind this organization being created was concern by Black and Latino parents that the presence of law enforcement in school has led to the disproportionate arrest of Black and brown youth for minor infractions. So you skip school, drugs, disruption, talking back, that's what the data shows. It's not according to me. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is what other alternatives other than expanding programs and more law enforcement in school when it is clear that it is not benefiting a specific group of kids, i.e. Black and Latino children. And I'm sure all of you all care about protecting all of our kids. I'm saying some of our kids are not being protected with this current system. How do you respond to that?
Well, first and foremost, I'm grateful you brought up the data, and I want to discuss the underlying data, and it's deeply, deeply flawed. The reason why it's flawed is because, remember, less than 20% of schools in the state of Maryland have security or school resource officers. Unfortunately, they're disproportionately put in schools that have some troubled youth in there, right? So those numbers are skewed. I guarantee if you saw a school resource officer in every school in Maryland, those numbers would balance out significantly. But unfortunately, because of the resources, they are triaged to some of the most troubled schools. So you do see that disproportionality, but the data is only 20% of all the schools in Maryland. So I think that creates some unintended consequences. And I think if you extrapolate data out fully, you would see a different story. But I understand what the data as presented shows, and that's obviously concerning, right? Again, I have no interest at all getting more kids caught up in the criminal justice system. None at all, right? What I do have concerns about is things that you and I discussed, right? Building trust between the community and law enforcement, that holistic community policing model, which is what the program you referenced seems to be a piece of, and an effective piece, and it's a great program, right? But it's going to take a wraparound, holistic approach to make our schools safer, to build those relationships with law enforcement, and this is not the solution, but it's certainly a piece of the puzzle.
Gotcha. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I don't see, Delegate Tolles.
Second bite the apple. Let's be really quick. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate, look, I'm new to this committee, so I just want to get a clarification. And my colleague here said it's a Ways and Means question. Put Madam President on the spot.
I can answer it.
Do SRO, are they already allowed to be in elementary school, or is it that because of the funding, they put them in schools where you feel there's a need?
Well, it goes back to exactly to my answer to Delegate Acevero's question. Because so few schools have them, the resources are so limited, they are put in priority settings, and elementary schools are not one of those generally.
But they can.
They can be.
Put them in it, right. So I just wanted to say, I think it's important to look at children, like kindergarten, first grade, second grade. Trust can be built with the custodial staff. Trust is built with kindness, not necessarily built with school resourcing officers, I don't want to say policing, but I want to use a different word, but my point is that trust can be built with kindness for first graders and kindergartners. We don't necessarily need to have more allocation so that we can put it in more schools. So I I didn't know if they were already there or not. So
Trust can only be built with law enforcement,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks for the bill again, Delegate. Good to see you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Delegate Ivy is up next to House Bill 700. You have a panel. Delegate Ivy, you can bring them on up.
Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, Delegate Julian Ivy here presenting House Bill 700. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. Really appreciate the work that we do here in this committee. This legislation establishes a direct admission program at participating public higher education institutions in Maryland. The goal is simple, but transformative. If a Maryland high school student meets clear academic benchmarks, that student should not have to guess whether college is within reach. They should just know. As introduced, and by the way, it is significantly amended, the bill required the Maryland Higher Education Commission to administer a direct admissions process through the state's financial aid system and the common application. It tied eligibility to the college and career readiness standard and required participating institutions to waive application fees and offer conditional admissions to eligible students. The intent is to reduce friction, eliminate unnecessary barriers, and send a clear message to Maryland students that they belong in our higher education system. Since being introduced, stakeholders have come together in rare alignment to refine this bill. They agreed upon amendments do three key things. First, they shift from a rigid statutory CCR-only standard to eligibility requirements established collaboratively through an MOU among the Commission, MSDE, and the public senior institutions. This ensures academic integrity while allowing flexibility in institutional input. Second, they adjust the implementation timeline to the 2028-2029 academic year, giving agencies adequate time to build the technical and operational infrastructure needed to do this correctly. Third, they add a focused, time-limited study on the administration of the program, including financial, legal, technical, and data integration considerations, with a report due July 1st, 2027. That study sunsets automatically, ensuring this does not become an endless process. These amendments strengthen the bill. They preserve the core vision of automatic opportunity for qualified students while ensuring implementation is thoughtful, collaborative, and sustainable. This legislation was heard in the Senate last week. The different stakeholders came together. They worked out agreements that I believe put this bill in a really good stance, of course, but nonetheless puts it in the position that we're here to discuss today, and we're asking for a favorable report. We do have individuals from the AIB here for informational testimony as well, and I'm here for any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
It's for you, and then we'll bring up all the other 5 witnesses together. Delegate Smith.
Thank you, Delegate, for bringing the bill. I'm sure you've noted that there's been some challenges over the past, I would say, several years related to MHEC administering various financial aid programs, and it looks like this would be jointly administered by MSDE and MHEC. What is your confidence in MHEC's ability to carry out this bill should it be passed?
You know, Delegate, I appreciate the question, and you being the subcommittee chair of the jurisdiction here, I'm sure you have much more input and insight there. What I will say, this bill has been heavily amended, and it'll allow for a less prescriptive process that the institutions and the various stakeholders can agree on. And I hope that we can come to a favorable position on this bill.
Well, I think we're all a little bit doubtful of MHEC's ability to administer financial aid at this point, so we're going to work in the constraints of that with your bill.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? All right. We have 5 witnesses. Let's have them all come up, and we'll take left to right. Erwin Hess, Sean Robbins, Elena Livinus, Richard Kincaid, and let's have Joy Schaefer come up as well. You can just spread out among the 5 seats. And start on the left, go right down the line. You're right. 2 minutes each.
Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Kaiser, and members of the committee. My name is Sean Robbins, and I serve as the Director of Advocacy for the National Association for College Admission Counseling, representing more than 28,000 school counselors, admission professionals, and college access leaders nationwide. I submit this testimony in support of HB 700 and the creation of a direct admission policy in the state of Maryland. As of today, 16 states have implemented some form of direct admission. The goal is simple: reduce unnecessary barriers in the college application process and provide students with greater clarity and confidence about their post-secondary options. There are many successful models. In North Carolina, students with a 2.8 GPA or higher as rising seniors meet one of the core requirements for direct admission. In Riverside County, California, a pilot program proactively sent direct admission letters to 17,000 students who earned at least a 2.5 GPA in required courses. Of those 17,000 students, 13,200 followed up on their offer of admission. Following that pilot success, Governor Newsom of California signed legislation expanding the policy statewide so that every eligible high school senior receives a proactive letter of acceptance to a California state university. Direct admission began in 2015, and more than a decade of data show measurable results. First-time undergraduate enrollment increased by 4 to 8%, an average of 50 to 100 additional students per campus. In-state enrollment increased by 8 to 15%, about 80 to 140 additional students per campus. The most significant enrollment gains occurred at 2-year open enrollment institutions. A study published in Inside Higher Ed, drawing on data from Niche, found that the most popular areas of study among direct admit students were health and medicine, STEM, social sciences, and business, fields that are critical to workforce demand and Maryland's economic competitiveness. HB 700 is an evidence-based, student-centered policy. It simplifies the process, increases enrollment, strengthens in-state participation, and aligns with workforce needs. NACAC supports HB 700 and urges a favorable report. Thank you for your consideration.
Good afternoon. While I'm currently the Director of the Center for Innovation in College Admissions, my name is Erwin Hess. I am here today to share my personal journey in K-12 and why this bill is essential. As a former first-generation low-income Latino male from Wheaton, Maryland, and I was born in Tacoma Park, as Delegate mentioned earlier about Tacoma Park comment. My parents always told me to go to college, but never knew how. After all, my mother was an immigrant from El Salvador who cleaned houses, and my father was an immigrant from Peru, and he was a carpenter. In elementary school, I learned English, was an honor roll student, and was destined for a bright future. A few years later, during high school, I had multiple run-ins with the law, which is the irony of the conversation that was happening before. Was suspended from high school over 20 times and had a 1.3 GPA. I hung out with the wrong crowd, and I was on my way to become another statistic. I can only remember one meeting with my high school counselor during senior year. She told me you can either join the military or work with your dad as a carpenter. She never once told me I could go to my local community college since it was open enrollment as an institution. She never once told me that I qualified for Pell Grants because I was a low-income student and that my college would be covered for tuition. I never knew these things existed. Long story short, I ended up earning 5 degrees, 2 associates, a bachelor's, a master's, and a doctorate from Johns Hopkins. My life would have been completely different if I had only listened to my counselor. Because of this, I worked 10 years in site admissions offices at the University of Maryland, Johns Hopkins, and Georgetown. I now have the knowledge and experience, both personally and professionally, to know that a direct admission policy in this state is exactly what we need today. In fact, we needed this yesterday because every day that this policy is not signed into law is another day that we hope a 17-year-old is getting the right guidance for their future after high school. Hope is not a strategy. Passing this proactive direct admission bill is. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schaefer?
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Joy Schaefer. I'm the Government Relations Director at the Accountability and Implementation Board, and I'm here just to provide some information and some clarity to some of the definitions that are in the bill. We provided a letter of information on this bill, and as originally drafted, the bill centrally used the career and college ready standard that is in the blueprint as sort of the gatekeeper to eligibility for being offered college admission, which it was never intended to do. So the legislature intended for CCR to be, and I'm going to go back to the commission. When the commission began its work, we were looking at college students that were graduating without the kinds of preparation that they were, that other students around the world were having. And so that left us our students at a competitive disadvantage. They were graduating from 12th grade, not college and career ready. The 10th grade standard, which is what the CCR standard is that by 10th grade, students have reached an academic bar that says that they are ready to take on more rigorous courses. For example, advanced placement, dual enrollment. They're ready for real-world experiences through an apprenticeship. They have the skills and content knowledge to do that at 10th grade, so that in the 11th and 12th grade, they can hone those skills, take those rigorous courses, have those rigorous real-world experiences, and by graduation, be ready to walk into a career or to participate in higher education. That 10th grade CCR was never meant to be sort of the entry point to college or to indicate that they were ready for a 4-year college institution. The value of that CCR, however, is for those 10th graders and for those high school students to know that they are ready, to be prepared to be ready, and to be able to take advantage of a very broad array of rigorous 11th and 12th grade opportunities. So the way that the bill is amended, the AIB is comfortable with the fact that CCR is used as an eligibility, is included in eligibility, and not the standalone and all be all of eligibility.
Good afternoon, buenas tardes, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Kaiser, and members of the committee. For the record, I am Deputy Secretary Elena Quiroz-Lavanes, representing the Maryland Higher Education Commission. We deeply thank Delegate Ivey for his leadership and vision on this bill. I want to begin with a success story that sets the stage for why we are here. In 2024, when the State Board of Education expanded the college and career readiness standard, the number of Black and Latino students identified as ready more than tripled in a single year. These students have earned their credentials, but we have a disconnect between college readiness and college enrollment. According to the Maryland Longitudinal Data System, nearly half of our high school students who graduate do not immediately enroll in college. For many, the barrier isn't a lack of talent, but rather the complexity of the transition. HB 700 is a mechanism to bridge that gap. To ensure that we deliver on this promise, MHEC and the Maryland State Department of Education have come together to submit a joint letter of support for this bill with amendments. Our agencies are united behind a policy-first framework. First, we must bridge the readiness gap. Our amendments require our agencies and governing boards to jointly define a unified admission standard by July 2027. When the state tells a student they are ready, our universities should agree that they are also admissible. Second, privacy. We have separated the technology from the statute to mandate a technical feasibility study. We need to determine the most secure way to match academic records with financial aid eligibility while strictly protecting student privacy. Third, our timeline designates a full launch for the high school class of 2029, building a secure runway. This remains a voluntary partnership for our universities, but for the student, it changes the story. They don't have to submit an application and hope for an acceptance. They now will receive a letter that answers the question, is there a place here for me, with a guaranteed and financially supported yes. We respectfully request a favorable report on HB 700 with these amendments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Barnes, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Richard Kincaid. I'm the Assistant State Superintendent for the Division of College and Career Pathways at the Maryland State Department of Education. I want to thank Delegate Ivey for his leadership on House Bill 700. This bill has sparked meaningful collaboration among MSD, the State Board of Education, and the Maryland Higher Education Commission around a shared goal, expanding opportunity and removing barriers for Maryland students as they pursue education and training after high school. At its core, HB 700 is about creating clearer, more equitable pathways to post-secondary success. By linking the college and career readiness standard to direct admissions, it transforms CCR from an adult-facing metric into something real and actionable for students. It sends a powerful message. If you meet the readiness standard in high school, you have earned a direct connection to the next step. That clarity can open doors for more students, especially those who may not otherwise see themselves reflected in traditional admission systems. We strongly support the vision of this bill, and we also recognize the need to address several policy and operational considerations. Additional alignment is needed between CCR standard and higher education admissions criteria, and there are real data sharing and system costs associated with the implementation. The proposed amendment responds to those realities while preserving the long-term goal. They extend the implementation timeline to allow thoughtful coordination, direct MSD and MHEC to jointly establish a unified admission standard built on CCR, and create space to design secure, effective data systems that align with financial aid notification timelines. With these amendments, MSD, MHEC, and the State Board strongly support HB 700 and look forward to continued collaboration towards launching a direct admission systems by the 28-29 school year. We respectfully ask for a favorable report with these amendments. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I'm going to lead off with a question. I don't know if there's others with questions. I'll direct my question to Ms. Schaefer. Good to see you. We served on the Kerwin Commission together.
Good to see you.
I like the idea behind this bill, and I had questions in terms of the implementation. When a student gets a letter like this, it might give them the impression that there's a spot at one school over another. So how would that work through the, as you might know, maybe somebody else knows, how that would work based on the amended version?
So I can't speak to that. I'm not sure what the mechanics would be.
Okay. Is there if there's someone else who can speak to the mechanics?
I can speak to that. Most institutions that offer direct admission, we're not referring to the Ivies or University of Maryland College Park or other institutions that have more selective admissions. Direct admissions is mainly for institutions that are looking for students have higher acceptance rates than the ones that you only hear about in the media. And these are institutions that are more open access. So they're institutions with over 50%, 60, 70% acceptance rates already. They're not institutions that are going to, like I said, be the ones that you mainly hear about in the top 10, top 20, quote unquote, rankings.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Grist.
Does the bill explicitly say what you're saying? One of the concerns that I would have with this bill is that, you know, you have students who work their entire lives to go to college, you know, and they do not just their academics, but all the extracurriculars. And the concern that we would have is that, or that I would have, is that there's only a certain number of seats at each of these colleges, and would somebody who is less qualified potentially take the place of someone else? And if the bill explicitly says exactly what you're doing, it wouldn't do that, I'm guessing. Is that?
That's correct. We're not asking for University of Maryland College Park or every single university in the system to jump on board. We're asking for the institutions that are already looking for students, especially that there's an enrollment cliff that's happening because of declining birth rates from the recession in 08 through 2010. Institutions are going to look for more students. So again, this isn't like at the University of Texas in the Texas system where there's a 10% rule. And then what ended up happening, to your point, at the University of Texas at Austin, at their state flagship, they had to decrease it to a 6% rule because too many students were going to take up spots from the 10%. This doesn't include any percentage rule, any rankings rule, anything like that. Institutions could hop on board to this if they want, or they could self-select out if they don't.
Do you know how many institutions we have in Maryland already that
we currently have 4?
Do you have any institutions we have in Maryland that are not at capacity where this would actually apply offhand? I don't know if you don't, we can figure that. We can get that information.
We currently have 4 institutions in the state of Maryland that are already doing a form of direct admission.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, I mean, how many are not at full capacity right now who could take more students? Do we know? If not, it's okay if you don't.
We're happy
we can
to
get that
get you
information.
that
yeah, okay.
data.
Sure.
And just to reiterate, one of the think I can speak on behalf of both agencies in this moment of not so much rare alignment because we're working closely together on many topics. This is what drew us to the bill, is the fact that it is voluntary and it is direct admissions. The 10% admissions policies that you're referring to tend to have adverse effects, and I don't think that you'd see both agencies here in support of a bill like that.
Thank you.
If you could share that with the committee, that information.
Of course.
Thank you. Delegate Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Delegate, for bringing this bill, and thank you to this panel. The second witness that gave testimony, you were really highlighting something we were honestly just talking about earlier today, is the unevenness of high school counseling. There are some amazing counselors, and then there's some people that sometimes aren't giving people the full array of opportunities that they are eligible for. And so my question would be directed at the AIB representative or MSDE. One of the things that, even when I first was elected, was on Ways and Means, I kept asking about the focus on counseling, because in many ways, it's like anything in life. The reason why sometimes we need social workers is because people don't know about the things that could help them, right? And so counselors, to me, are almost like that inside of a school setting. And so while this in some ways is a workaround around poor advising, it doesn't remove the expectation that we still have quality advisors. So I wanted to know if you could speak to that.
I'll just provide brief testimony on this. I agree with you 100%. This isn't to supplement counselors or anything. They do an amazing job. But statistically, there are 500 plus students for every one counselor at various parts, even worse in some other parts of the country. And we can't just hope that every counselor is going to individually personalize a plan for students for post-secondary education. We should implement something that's already going to tell them automatically, you're already into these schools, congratulations, by the start of senior year. Now it's up to you if you want to apply to these other schools. These other schools require application components and so on, essays, 2 letters of rec, $60 application fees, SATs, all that. But these schools, you're already in, congrats. And here's your financial aid letter, here's how much it'll cost you out of tuition and so on.
Delegate, I will add that, the blueprint does provide for career coaches, and there's 300 of them now, and that number might have been even more at this point, but across the state, coaching children and students. And so I would assume that would be part of information that would be shared with them.
Probably need more.
Yeah, and that would be the thing that I add to that piece. As we are working through implementation of the blueprint, that career coaching piece is important to notate. So there's about 440 of them in the state. And those career coaches are led through a system that's being developed by my team directly, but also in partnership with Maryland Workforce Association, AIB, and the CT committee. As part of the guidance work, in fact, just 2 weeks ago, we met with every LEA and their workforce partner to talk about how career counseling is going to roll out across the state. And it's a network of friendly support. It's warm adults, right? Working with kids. It's not one person. It's not just your guidance counselor. It's your career coach. It's your 504 and your IEP coordinator, right? It's getting all of this information into those hands so that at every touch point, students are aware of what their pathway looks like, right? So the end goal is a job. Like, the way that you get there is 4-year, 2-year apprenticeship, internship, all of the things that sing to a student's heart. Those students can't know it and become it if the caring adults that they are with aren't aware of the system, right? So this becomes part of that integrated system of support that students, will be provided.
Thank you. Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just a quick one. Thank you so much for that information. I would love to follow up with you offline, but I just didn't want to let the moment pass that even saying the end goal is a career could be limiting, right? I just think we have to have a conversation that is so without ceilings that people can determine the path for them, because in many ways I look at a lot of career education as a pathway to entrepreneurship in many ways, or self-employment. So sometimes, when we reduce the end goal as just a job, we might even be limiting someone, just like saying only military or this, you know what I mean? I think we should really just ensure that we're always as broad as possible, because at the end of the day, we're humans and we all have blind spots. And so we just have to keep our framing as broad as possible. But thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you all for coming in today. I don't see any other questions. Appreciate you coming in. Thank you. The next bill we have on the list is House Bill 555. I was wondering why you were here, Mr. Bishop. Welcome. DLS code revision. All right, go ahead. Thank you.
Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, it's great to see you all. It's also great to see our wonderful committee staff, Laura and Joe and Yanisha. I am Ryan Bishop, the Director of the Office of Policy Analysis for DLS. I am here on House Bill 555, which is a code revision bill that is by request from DLS. The bill primarily revises and recodifies state law related to the Janet Hoffman Loan Assistance Repayment Program through a series of non-substantive clarifications and technical changes. The goal of the bill is to better delineate the eligibility provisions for each of the eligibility categories. The revisions in the bill are initiated by DLS under our statutory responsibility to maintain the clarity and consistency of the statute. It's an extension of the code revision project that officially existed for about 40 years, that started in the 1970s and that ended in 2016, but that we have unofficially continued for the last decade. We thank the Speaker for introducing the bill on our behalf, and we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you so much. Any questions? All right, shortest hearing of the day. Thank you so much.
That's what I like to do. Thank you.
All right. Yes, we now have two bills that are jointly assigned with Environment and Transportation. The first is, I think, a departmental on House Bill 227. And I'll introduce, I see 4 members of the committee here, Delegates Baylor, Anderson, Stein, and Morgan. And if you do have questions, certainly come up to one of the desks. Oh, Delegate Lewis, now there's 5 of you. All right, great. Go ahead on House Bill 227.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, both committees, I guess. Jeff Tosi here representing the Maryland Environmental Service. This is the departmental bill, only one of the session that tackles 3 issues. And I'll go through them briefly. You have some written testimony, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions. The first issue that we're trying to solve here is that there's a discrepancy in our board governance statute. So MES is governed by a board of directors, a 10-member board, 7 voting. The board has 3 statutory officers, a chair, a secretary, and a treasurer. The secretary of the board is authorized by statute to delegate responsibilities. So this is like compliance with Open Meetings Act issues, that kind of stuff, to the board clerk. The treasurer is only allowed to delegate one responsibility of the many responsibilities to the deputy treasurer. What we're looking to do here is to open that up and have the treasurer of the board be able to delegate all of their responsibilities to the deputy treasurer. That does not mean that the board would not then still maintain all of its governance. It's just really a function of what does the deputy treasurer do versus the treasurer. We don't expect the treasurer to have to maintain an accounting system and disperse money, things like that. So that's really functions for the CFO, and that's who the deputy treasurer is. So that's the first piece. The second piece is related to our procurement. So in 2023, I think it was, the state increased the small procurement threshold to $100,000. MES has its own governing statute, and we're mostly exempt from Division II of State Finance and Procurement, but we have a small procurement threshold of just $25,000. So we're looking here to increase it to $50,000, and just to give you an understanding of what that would help us with. So about of the number of procurements that we handle, about 327 fall above the $25,000 threshold. About 26% of those fall between $25,000 and $50,000, which is what we're looking to increase it to. And that only impacts about 3% of the total procurement dollars that we manage above $25,000. So it represents an operational efficiency, but there's no loss of oversight. The board still has to approve and monitor of all the procurements that we process, and some of those still have to go before BPW. And the third piece is related to a small piece of our statute. If we own and operate a water system, a solid waste system, we have to establish a service district. So we, in that case, we would be charging residents a fee for the services that were provided since we're non-budgeted. We only have one such service district right now in Hartford County, the Darlington Water System. So when we want to establish or change the rates, currently under law, we have to provide a notice only in a newspaper of general circulation, and then there's some very prescriptive language with regard to how big the font has to be, et cetera. We're looking to update the statute to allow us to, in addition to doing a newspaper in general circulation, also other means of communication for the customers. And so those are the three things, and hopefully get a favorable report. Bill was voted favorably out of the Senate as well.
Thank you so much. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you.
Any questions? All right, thank you all. We're done with the hearing for House Bill 227. I didn't look behind me, I guess still no questions. House Bill 230, the Consolidated Transportation Program Prioritization, again, jointly assigned and introducing again, wow, and one more. So we've got Delegates Morgan, Delegate Allen, Delegate Lewis, Delegate Anderson, and Delegate Stein from E&T and Environment and Transportation. And again, if you all have questions, you'll take one of the desks. Thank you. Go ahead.
1 second. Sorry. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is, for the record, I am Joe McAndrew, Assistant Secretary for Planning and Project Development at the Maryland Department of Transportation. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity today to speak in support of House Bill 230. Maryland's transportation investments create outsized impacts on our communities, economy, environment, and residents. It is essential that the state get the most possible benefit for every tax dollar spent. And that is why the administration is proposing the Transportation Investment Priorities Act of 2026. This act introduces changes to the Consolidated Transportation Program to make the process for selecting new surface transportation capacity projects more transparent, objective, predictable, and effective in achieving Maryland's transportation goals, and indeed the goals articulated in Governor Moore's state plan. This bill ensures that MDOT is data-driven and heart-led, and it directly responds to a priority recommendation included in the 2023 interim report of the Maryland Commission on Transportation Revenue and Infrastructure Needs, known as the Train Commission. This act also builds on the work done by this body in 2017 when it passed the Chapter 30 requirements for evaluating new capacity projects at MDOT. MDOT began the process of updating the Chapter 30 program 2 years ago with the goal of ensuring that the procedures MDOT uses to select projects are clear and transparent to our external stakeholders and the broader public, and to ensure that projects are being properly evaluated to get the most out of every tax dollar MDOT spends. This work began with an internal cross-departmental group and led to the introduction of a departmental bill last year. We also conducted a no-funding pilot round to test a beta version of the process that we are proposing to implement should this bill pass. Over the summer and fall of 2025, MDOT also conducted intensive outreach with counties and other stakeholders, which included a work group comprising the Maryland Association of Counties and the Maryland Municipal League and numerous local representatives, many of whom are here to support the bill today. The feedback we got from both last year's bill, the pilot round, and the engagement were informative and influenced the content of the bill before you. The engagement has yielded a stronger bill aligned with state and local priorities. This bill directs MDOT to create clearer, transparent processes for stakeholders and modal administrations to move projects from initial concept all the way through to inclusion in the CTP for project construction funding. To accomplish this, the bill does three things. First, it creates a clearer, more consistent process for locals and modal administrations to ask that MDOT study an issue through an initial feasibility study that may result in a construction project. This element is a new addition this year that resulted from the stakeholder engagement and feedback from local partners over the interim. Second, it creates a consistent, transparent, and responsive process for funding capacity projects for construction. The bill lays out that MDOT must publicize funds available for expansion projects every other year. MDOT will then score these project requests using quantitative criteria informed by the goals laid out in the legislation. MDOT will then release scoring and propose funding with the draft CTP in the fall. And the bill provides for local input on the project rankings through the CTP tour as we do today, and leaves the final decision to the MDOT secretary to make any modifications he or she sees as necessary based on policy and stakeholder considerations. Third, to support increased transparency and accountability, the legislation revamps the Maryland Transportation Commission, making it a venue for review and discussion of the evaluation and funding of capital expansion projects, as well as the larger program that we're going to go ahead and unfold here. Each of the steps is taken with transparency in mind, with scoring methods and project scoring available online, publication of project ranking and funding in the draft CTP, and any changes made by the Secretary to funded projects fully explained in front of an updated Maryland Transportation Commission. We also want to highlight one other change in this bill, which is to shift the release of the draft CTP from early September to October 1 of each year. We are doing so at the request of the Department of Budget and Management to better align the overall budgeting process for the state between our capital and our operating programs. And finally, I want to highlight what is not in the bill, the specific scoring criteria informed by the statutory goals, the number of projects a county or municipality can submit, whether there are any differences in weighting of criteria in different regions of the state. All of these are valid program design questions that stakeholders have raised through our process over the last 2 years. And should this legislation be successful and be enacted, we will work with our partners to provide and develop program guidance to work out these issues in coordination with our local partners. We will take feedback on that guidance, and if it's not working, the legislation obligates us to continue to take feedback and refine the process, even when we are implementing this new approach. Taken together, the changes proposed in this bill will make substantial improvements on MDOT's current project development and scoring process. They will also provide the space and opportunity for the process to be improved and refined over time, making sure that MDOT is doing a better job of being a partner to local governments across the state. In conclusion, in 2017, the legislature, through Chapter 30, set MDOT on a path to being more analytical, data-driven, and transparent with its investment decision-making. This bill is a next step in that process, where these goals and values are further imbued into MDOT's processes and culture, leading to better returns on MDOT's scarce investments and better outcomes for Marylanders. For these requests, I respectfully ask that the committee grant the House Bill 230 a favorable report, and I'm happy to take any questions. I'm joined here by my colleague, Jeff Anderson, Chief of Planning, Programming, and Project Development, to assist as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Anderson, were you planning to speak or just answer questions?
Just answer questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions for this panel? Come on up to a desk while we take Delegate Grice's question.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So I think I heard you say that the projects or the project goals haven't changed, or will they change? Because I'm reading the text of the bill now. It looks like they have.
The goals are by and large the same. What we're ultimately doing is outlining what the goals should be for our criteria, and then we're going to establish criteria underneath that ultimately we will use to rank and score projects that are submitted for consideration.
So on page 13 and 14 is where these project goals are outlined. So we're adding security to safety. And then here we're taking out system preservation and adding accessibility and mobility. Is that not happening, or will it happen?
So we currently evaluate all of our projects, but it's not in a apples to apples comparison across modes, nor is it done in a transparent manner. So we will be doing that in a more transparent manner using objective criteria in a quantitative manner.
All right, so this is a yes or no question.
But yes,
because you didn't really answer the question. Go ahead.
Well, so the changes listed in there that say access and mobility, that is one of the goals.
Okay.
So the changes.
All right, so is system preservation still a goal?
System preservation is a goal for the.
It's bracketed out in the bill.
It's a goal for the department, but it is separated out. This legislation is really about new capacity. So we have a different set of, basically different funding for system preservation.
So according to this piece of legislation, is it still a priority according to the law? System, I'm talking about, because it's bracketed out, which means that that's no longer a goal or priority according to the law, right? If this bill passes.
It is a goal. It is a core goal for our work. Most of our funds on an annual basis goes to system preservation, and ultimately what we're going to do is take with the scarce amount of money that we have available to grow and enhance our system. We're going to ultimately assess those dollars using the goals that are articulated there.
If it's still a priority, why is it bracketed out in the bill? Because I mean, we had 8 different priorities. Now we're eliminating 3. Three. So went from 8 to 5, and then it looks like we bracketed out system preservation. So if it's still a priority, why is it the intent of the bill to bracket it out of the law? I'm confused. You're saying it's a priority, but the action is different than that. We're doing the exact opposite.
I hear you. I think that it is a consideration of the fund source, right? So what we're going to ultimately do is look at our funding available and say, and work with you all to determine what the appropriate allocation of funds look like, as well as our stakeholder partners, to make sure that we've got adequate funds to maintain the system in a state of good repair.
So if there's money left over from the other priorities, then we'll consider safety or system preservation.
Yeah, I think that the other way around is what I would say, is that we will be first allocating funds to system preservation as best we can to ensure that the system is reliable and safe and effective for what we have built.
Can you give me some?
Delegate Grice, if you check in the bill, systems preservation is in there 4 times. It's only bracketed out 1 of those times. So I think you might have to check the other parts of the bill. Can we take some questions from Delegate Morgan and come back?
Sure, that'd be fine.
Delegate Morgan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You answered my first question. You don't have a scoring mechanism devised yet, or is it somewhere where your scoring mechanism is in here? So I guess we have old scores that we sort of saw and new scores which are to be determined. Is that correct?
So we have developed a scoring. So under each goal, you're correct. In the legislation, the goal just the legislation simply articulates the goals. Unlike Chapter 30, which went ahead and basically told us what scoring mechanisms to use, this bill does not do that. In the pilot process, we did develop scoring to go along with each goal. And so we have that developed. It is not specified in the legislation because we found under Chapter 30 that basically not all of those scoring systems worked well, and you couldn't update them over time as new data or information became available. So while the goals are laid out in the legislation, the actual scoring mechanisms are left to administrative action for MDOT, and we have developed those, and we used them in the pilot last year.
So the scoring will be to be determined, not for the legislature to see, but you'll come up with it on your own and then sort of impose it. Is that a fair statement?
Well, we gave, I think, our stakeholders a very good sense of what those scoring mechanisms were going to be, and we would be presenting them in front of the MTC every other year for basically reviews and to make those public. And we have made the scoring mechanisms and methodologies that we used during the pilot were all posted online and would be posted online every year so that people, as they considered which projects they wanted to submit, could see exactly how they're scored.
Well, then would you possibly consider in your scoring to show 2 columns, score before, score today, so the public can see where you made variances along the way that could be good or could be bad, depending upon the community that you're in?
I mean, I think it would be very easy, whether and we can do this, but you can certainly go to the existing CTP, for instance, and look at a project that was scored in the past and then compare it to what it got in the future. The scoring system that we are proposing to use basically takes all of the projects that are submitted in a given round of scoring and compares them to one another. So the scores will depend on what the set of projects are that are submitted, so that in a given year, the score may change relative to other projects that are submitted. But MDOT is basically in the position each year as we fund capital projects of essentially looking at a slate of projects and deciding from among them. And that's why the scoring is essentially relative to one another.
But wouldn't there be characteristics of each score that are indicative between the old scoring system and the new scoring system?
Yeah, there would be some commonalities.
Well, that's what I'm just saying, is so the public would have the opportunity to see how you've changed the scoring.
Yes.
Depending upon the mood of where we are today.
Yes.
My next question is, you just discussed surface.
Another question?
Yeah, real quick. You discussed surface projects. What about, is surface just related to road? What about bridges?
Bridges would be included. It is an element of the surface transportation system.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good. Delegate Grace.
Obviously, the muscle in this legislation in regards to which projects get funded, which ones don't get funded, it has everything to do with that one paragraph. Projects shall be evaluated on how they address the following goals. So even though it's still a priority for you guys to fund project, as far as system preservation will not be scored according to if this bill moves. Is that correct?
Yes, as the Assistant Secretary said, our first move will be to figure out how much funding are we putting towards system preservation versus how much funding is going to new capacity. We will announce the amount available for new capacity, and then for only the money for new capacity, we will use those criteria and those goals to evaluate the new capacity projects.
All right, I got it. Okay, got it. And then for new projects, and that's what you're saying. So we've changed some things here. Accessibility and mobility, I'm guessing that's close to existing infrastructure, right? Probably within like a proximity to public transit, is that?
Accessibility and mobility, one way, for instance, that we measured it in the pilot round is to basically say, okay, how many jobs can you reach from a given area in 10 minutes and 20 minutes and 30 minutes. Okay. Now, with the project added, we would then put that into the transportation model and figure out how many more jobs you can reach because of the new project. And that is the basis for instance, scoring what additional access to jobs you get from a project.
And climate change in the environment will probably be determined by how much carbon is being reduced with that project. Is that probably accurate?
The environment measure is comprised of greenhouse gases and criteria pollutants. So in areas that are in non-attainment, we would look at things like NOx and SOx emissions and other precursors for ozone. In places that were not in non-attainment, it's greenhouse gas. And one of the ways that you can score well on that criteria is basically reducing congestion or moving trips to other modes of transportation.
So far it looks like, at least the first two that we talked about, most of those projects that will score higher in areas where there's congestion, where there's a high population so far. And moving on, social equity, what would you guys look at in regards to, what does that mean?
We looked at a couple things, and it was specifically whether projects were having an effect on population in underserved or overburdened communities. And so, for instance, if your project, so we'd look at a census tract, for instance, and if it's an underserved, overburdened community and your project means that more people in that community can reach more jobs, so a version of the access score, then you scored well on that. And if it improved safety for those populations, you scored well.
So for communities that don't have a large minority population, they probably won't score well?
It's not minority-based, it's income and other things. So those areas exist throughout the state.
And economic development, if it has a positive impact on, bringing in, corporations and businesses and that sort of thing, it'll score well. So if you're in a community that's rural in nature, you probably won't score well in that particular category either, I would imagine, because you don't have a whole lot in the way of economic development, economic growth.
It's there were definitely projects that scored reasonably well in the pilot round that were in more rural places for economic development. Yes.
Fair enough. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the latitude there, and let me ask multiple questions. Thank you.
Do you build a lot of roads where there's no congestion? I mean, that wouldn't make a lot of sense. Do you do that now?
We try our best to make sure we're maximizing the taxpayer investment for strong ROI.
Yeah, I would just think that indicia kind of models what you would want to do anyway, right? Like, if I got a road that's not congested, I'm probably not going to build another road right next to it.
We're going to make sure it's maintained.
Yeah, okay. Delegate Ruff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, gentlemen. I just had a question about whether you had seen the opposition from the American Council of Engineering Companies, and if you have, a response to their assertion that any statutory scoring framework should be explicitly mode neutral, ensuring that highway, transit, and multimodal projects are evaluated fairly based on their relative contributions to safety, mobility, and economic development without predetermining favored modes in practice. What's your response to that, and and can you kind of relate it to the pilot and how it's kind of played out so far?
Yeah, and I'll touch on it a bit. So we currently, allocate our funds on an annual basis across mode. We do that today. What we're trying to do here, the majority of our capital program, especially when it comes to enhancement or expansion, is going to be within the transit or the highway side of the house. So we're trying to take those dollars, because oftentimes, transit will run within the right-of-way of a roadway facility, trying to make sure that we're looking at projects apples to apples and making sure that they best achieve the goals of the state. So I think within the question that's being asked of how you would do it, we appreciate the interest and the considerations. We've heard similar types of considerations about rural versus urban pots or regional allocations. And I think the challenge that we face as a department is that, that's an arbitrary decision. What is the appropriate number that we should put towards transit versus highway? I think that would be another discussion we'd need to debate here, and then, also be amending that every year. But then also, how do we properly allocate and make a decision in an objective, transparent manner that everybody can get behind? I think within the pilot, if you want to talk about the top 10 projects in terms of geographic and modal spread, I think it would be valuable because it might surprise you in terms of the modes that were ultimately top scorers.
This wasn't my opposition. I'm just asking the question.
Yeah. So, I mean, those things I think were explicitly goals of the program as we tried to set it up, to be able to evaluate things fairly, to have transparency, to serve the entirety of the state, and to do a good job basically understanding the value of an individual project rather than slanting towards a particular mode or particular geography. And so one of the reasons we did a pilot last year was to test the scoring system that we had come up with and understand whether, despite our best intentions, some sort of bias was introduced. And so one of the things we looked at was the top 10 projects. And what we saw was that there were large dollar projects and small dollar projects, that 7 of the top 10 scoring projects were road projects, 2 were transit projects, 1 was a bike ped project. Equally important in my mind was that the bottom 10 also had 6 road projects, 1 transit project, 6 road projects, 1 transit project, and 3 bike ped projects. So you saw both modes, all of those different modes performing well and performing not well. You also saw in the same county projects that scored very well and projects that didn't score well. So we ended up, I think, feeling like we had really designed a system that was doing a reasonably good job of actually evaluating projects rather than introducing a predetermined mode or geography.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and thank you to the department for all the work you've done on this over a number of years. I have 2 quick clarifications or questions. One is following up on Delegate Grice's question about climate change in the environment. To me, when I read this, it says projects shall be evaluated on how they address the following goals: safety, accessibility, and mobility. And then it says climate change in the environment, which climate change in the environment is not a goal in and of itself. So are you trying to say minimizing the impact on? Or, so would you do me a favor and look at those terms, because I think some of them are better than others, but climate change in the environment by itself is not a goal. So I think you need to spell out what you're actually saying there. And the second question is on the commission. You've revamped how the commission is appointed, and you have 13 members. The commission has no authority, correct?
They would be assigned a couple things. One would be to receive reviews and opportunities to engage on quarterly budget updates, so publicly discussing, our funding and financing and projects. They would also be charged with reviewing and providing input on the program evaluation and the program development for this bill. And then third, they would also have the ability to engage and discuss the project scores as they come out, both in the draft and then in the final. Authority to change or move, no, but it creates a venue for discussion
Right,
and ultimately
they're
engagement.
there to advise.
Yep.
To be well-informed and to advise.
Yep.
Okay, and you don't list any qualifications in the bill. Are you thinking these members would be experienced in transportation policy, or why is it just, why are there no qualifications listed?
We'd be happy to consider that. I think at the end of the day, we would hope that folks are coming forward with qualifications and understanding to support both financing and program development considerations.
Might be worth considering saying that.
Yep.
To give some parameters, general parameters, not too specific. And then the last question is, by geography, you just have rural and you have urban. You don't feel that you need to be more specific in terms of geography?
In the appointees section.
We're open to feedback on that if you feel that that's appropriate.
The previous commission was, that's why I was asking, but we can move on and talk about it offline.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to MDOT. I'm wondering if a scoring system such as you've developed is being used in other places.
Yeah, so we did, when we presented to the Train Commission in 2023, and we can share the deck there, but states that we were looking at, Virginia is probably the most mature model. Their program's called Smart Scale. A friend in the back will talk about it, I imagine, in his testimony soon. But North Carolina also has a model. Utah, Illinois, California has a model targeted towards a specific type of project. But those are the 5 states that have goals matching scoring, matching project decisions.
And thank you. Could you talk a little bit about the scoring system? It's very interesting. And, you know, in biomedical science, we do that to rate disease and risk, and it makes sense. It's scientific. But I'm curious how the scoring system that's proposed here might overlay on decisions that could be made about regional decision-making authority, different models of decision-making for surface transit.
Yeah, so, you know, that is a consideration. So Virginia's a good example. They have both a regional pot and then a statewide significant type of pot of funding for how they consider their dollars. They also have more dollars and more dollars generated oftentimes at the local level too. So it's a slightly different approach, and it's one that would work for the state of Maryland. You know, we looked at it and kind of determined that maybe we might not have adequate funds to create a regional and a statewide pot and still be able to do projects of size and scale that ultimately our constituents, both at the mode, but also our local partners, are asking for.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, did the pilot show a disparity between the urban and the rural?
3 of the top 10 projects were in more rural locations, and because it was a no funding pilot and basically submissions were essentially voluntary, we didn't really get an even set of submissions. We, I think, got more urban, suburban submissions, but we saw, as I said, 3 of the top 10 projects were in more rural locations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Delegate Watson kind of touched on one question I had regarding the makeup of this commission. But I have been in this chamber long enough to remember when there was an incident, well, at least the previous administration, Governor Hogan, was accused of essentially planning and building infrastructure projects that are close to his real estate properties to increase the value of those properties. And we've certainly come a long way with this bill. Can you speak a little bit more to what kind of an oversight and transparency? I'm happy to follow up with you all on the makeup of the commission afterwards, because I also noticed that. And I think there needs to be some amendments there. But can you speak to the overall bill? Because it seems to me from 2020 or 2021, when there were cases, when there were accusations of planning and infrastructure spending conveniently happening close to former Governor Hogan's properties, from then until now, what kind of transparency and oversight would this bill bring so that we don't have instances where projects are being approved and they just so conveniently happen to be next to or close to the private properties of whoever is occupying the governor's office?
Great question. I can't speak to the decisions that were made by the prior administration or the MDOT leadership previously. What I will say is that, currently, the current process enables that type of discussion. It enables good data-driven analysis to happen, but it's a pretty opaque process to our external stakeholders to engage, learn, and partner with us on the decision-making effort. And it creates a high burden on us to then be trusted, right? I would love for everybody to think that MDOT is making the best decision with our dollars that we have. I think we are, but I think that this is an opportunity to make sure that we're doing this in a more transparent, objective manner with which everybody can kind of understand the trade-offs, because the trade-offs are there today. Those trade-offs are being made between mode, between project, between location, because we have a finite amount of funding that we can ultimately allocate on a given year. And so this is an opportunity to enable greater transparency, engagement, and ultimately information sharing, both from us to stakeholders, but also from stakeholders to us if we're getting it wrong.
Gotcha. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to bring up the 5 favorable witnesses. Please, everyone come up, get at the table, and be ready to start your testimony. Corey Pitts, Christian McNeil, Victor Weisberg, Bill Pugh, Corrigan Salerno. Come on up. Starting left to right, just go right down the line. 2 minutes each. We're missing one, so if I've called your name and you're not up here, we're going to move on to the next panel. Right, you start, sir. Right there at the end. Yep. Yes, sir, on the left. My left.
Chair Barnes, and I am not Corrigan, but I'll explain that. Chair Barnes and Vice Chair Kaiser, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. For the record, my name is John Robert Smith. I am here to speak for House Bill 0230 and am representing Transportation for America. As a Republican mayor for 16 years, during that time I invested heavily in transportation choices for the people of my community and to benefit the rural residents that surrounded us. Transportation for America works at the national and state level to ensure that we're getting the most from our transportation investments, and it's sad to say that through most of the country we're falling way short of that goal. Projects take too long. Funding often works against the goals we ourselves have established, and the real decisions are often made behind closed doors. Little wonder that many of our fellow citizens question the choices that we make. But the Transportation Investments Priorities Act takes important steps to address these issues by defining the process and criteria by which projects will be considered for feasibility studies, clearly articulating the goals by which projects will be judged and relying upon data-driven analysis to score them, and mandating a number of transparency provisions to see that our own people have a clearer view of how we make decisions and why. Whether you're a Democrat or a former Republican mayor like me, I think these are things that people will get behind. Having clear goals, using data and analysis to identify high returns, and being transparent is just good government. Across the country, leading states are adopting similar data-driven performance-based systems. Minnesota, Virginia, Kentucky have already done so. California is in the midst of doing so now. Adoption of this bill will put Maryland in the company of leading states throughout the country. At the national level, Maryland Senator Alsobrooks just introduced the Transportation Project Accountability Act of 2026. He said the act strengthens public trust and gives everyday Americans opportunity to know exactly how we are investing in their communities and whether those investments are delivering real results. This is spot on. This is exactly what the Transportation Investments Priorities Act will deliver for the people of Maryland. For these reasons, Transportation for America respectfully requests a favorable report.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. Yes, sir. I'll take questions for everyone at the end.
Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Kaiser, and the rest of the members of the Appropriations Committee. My name is Corey Pitts. I'm a manager for Transportation Policy and Planning with the Montgomery County Department of Transportation. I'm here to request your favorable report on House Bill 230, the Transportation Investment Priorities Act of 2026. This bill modernizes the state's approach to transportation project prioritization, enhancing transparency and clarity for how transportation projects are identified for funding. The current project prioritization process has been hard to understand. In the past, when we submitted projects for evaluation, it was not clear why the project received the score it did, and little information could be gathered on how we might consider improving our project for a more favorable score in the future. For the past 18 months, I have worked with MDOT and other jurisdictions on the pilot of the new process, and I'm here because I believe our feedback was incorporated, resulting in an improved experience and bill language. Specifically in terms of the scoring, I feel the piloted methodology resulted in a better understanding of project shortcomings. This information will allow us to revise our projects to be more competitive while also better aligning projects with statewide transportation goals. I appreciated having the opportunity to work with MDOT and other local jurisdictions to submit projects to test the proposed scoring methodology and provide feedback to inform the current legislation. This should be a model for how future transportation policy can be advanced through partnership between localities and the state. Montgomery County is focused on delivering transportation projects that improve safety, expand transportation options for everyone, mitigate the climate impacts of the transportation sector while addressing past inequities and supporting future economic vitality. House Bill 230 will help by increasing transparency and predictability in state transportation funding decisions to support local projects. I request your favorable report on House Bill 230.
Thank you, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Kaiser, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 230. I'm Christian McNeil, Legislative Affairs Correspondent for Baltimore City's Department of Transportation, and I urge your support for this structurally significant transportation reform legislation. Baltimore City supports this bill because it enhances clarity and coordination in how the state advances major transportation investments. For jurisdictions that maintain extensive multimodal networks, a transparent and structured capital process is essential. When state priorities align with local planning efforts, Maryland's transportation network becomes more cohesive and better positioned to deliver coordinated, safety-focused improvements statewide. By increasing visibility into funding levels and project evaluation within the CTP, this legislation allows jurisdictions to plan strategically, responsibly sequence projects, and prepare for long-term capital commitments. It also reinforces public confidence that transportation dollars are allocated using consistent and objective standards. For Baltimore City, a structured and predictable framework supports corridor modernization, multimodal safety improvements, and capacity enhancements that serve residents and the broader region. It enhances collaboration between state and local partners and promotes a more accountable and data-driven investment process. House Bill 230 represents a meaningful step towards a more coordinated, transparent, and strategic transportation funding structure for Maryland. And for this, we ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Chair Barnes and Vice Chair Kaiser and members of the committee. I'm Victor Weisberg with Prince George's County Department of Public Works and Transportation, and on behalf of the Office of Prince George's County Executive to offer our support of House Bill 230. House Bill 230 introduces a new requirement for MDOT to clearly define the process by which counties may request development and evaluation or feasibility studies, which is an essential first step in advancing a transportation project. Historically, counties have long faced uncertainty in both initiating project development and inconsistency with projects being advanced through to completion within a reasonable time frame. By establishing a formal pathway for submitting county transportation project requests, HB 230 improves transparency and supports a statewide prioritization process. Prince George's County supports the intent of creating a clearer process, but also notes that this results in some procedural shift at the county level. To avoid delays to high-priority projects, the county stresses the need for elaboration on the timing within the feasibility process and close coordination with MDOT, which we have already enjoyed that collaboration. So our county planning cycles and project submissions can align and be evaluated thoroughly and appropriately within the updated requirements. Prince George's County supports this proposal and its improvements, but also emphasizes that it will require Prince George's County to assemble more comprehensive project data earlier in the process. The county anticipates the need for clear annual calendars, advanced communication of funding levels, and early engagement opportunities to ensure that local priorities are accurately scored and reviewed within the new timeline. For the reasons stated above, the Office of Prince George's County Executive supports House Bill 230 and asks for a favorable report.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Kaiser, members of the committee. My name is Bill Pugh. I'm the Transportation and Climate Director with the Coalition for Smarter Growth. Our organization advocates for walkable, bikeable, inclusive, and transit-oriented communities as the most sustainable and equitable way for the Washington, D.C. region to grow and provide opportunities for all. We have worked extensively in the Maryland suburbs of particularly Prince George's and Montgomery counties, and have supported numerous transit, safe streets, and arterial road investments there. HB 230 will ensure that Maryland's transportation investments are aligned with state policy goals and that funding decisions are transparent and data-driven. We applaud MDOT's effort to modernize the Chapter 30 project scoring program. This would ensure that these efforts guide future administrations in spending Maryland's transportation dollars wisely and with accountability. In neighboring Virginia, where our organization also works, the Smart Scale project funding and prioritization program is regarded as a national success story because it has resulted in more cost-effective projects and solutions. Equally important, because Smart Scale doesn't spread funds too thinly across many projects, with the result that many don't get built, the Virginia program has ensured that the selected projects are fully funded and are built more expeditiously. These key components of Smart Scale are likewise contained in MDOT's proposed legislation. HB 230 ensures consideration of land use, environmental impacts, and demand management solutions. It improves the connection between the state and localities to jointly ensure that local land use decisions are linked to transportation projects that the taxpayers can afford and that make sense. For these reasons, we ask for a favorable report for HB 230. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have Mr. Salerno here? The next person up is Corrigan Salerno.
Corrigan.
Oh, you. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Corrigan actually submitted the form. I'm afraid I'm not so technically.
You're fine, thank you. How about Tim Smith and Jason Stanford? If you could come forward, please. Thank you to all the members of this last panel. Tim Smith, Jason Stanford, Chris Lawson, and Michael Sakata. Whoever gets there first may begin. Go ahead and tell us your name, please.
Yes, good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Tim Smith. I'm the president of the Maryland Asphalt Association. We represent over 100 companies that do roadway construction in Maryland, as well as over 7,000 employees that are employed. Intentional or not, House Bill 230, as written, reduces roadways to an option for Marylanders, when in reality, they are essential to everyone's quality of life. The only way groceries, supplies, goods, freight, and emergency services are delivered to us is via roadways, especially for zero-car households. MDOT consistently states that system preservation is a priority, yet the decisions demonstrate a different approach. Maryland State Highway arguably has the most sophisticated and data-driven pavement management system in the nation, operated by transportation engineers. SHA experts know that $400 million a year is needed to properly maintain our pavement conditions. Despite that fact, MDOT has reduced pavement preservation funding for 3 straight years. Now we are investing less than 50% of the funding required for our roadways. To take that philosophy and try to put it into law as is concerning. So our industry lacks confidence in unclear rating system given the demonstrated trends we see in pavement funding. We're not opposed to a rating system, but it should be fair, data-driven, and transparent, as everyone has mentioned. But at a minimum, the project should be ranked by transportation mode, not all lumped together. Trying to have a single system to rank rail and roadway projects to serve different users, have different funding sources, and wildly diverse costs is not wise. For these reasons and more, we recommend that facts and process be better aligned for proceeding. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Who's next?
Hi, my name is Jason Stanford. I'm the president of the Northern Virginia Transportation Alliance. Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Just so you're aware, the Alliance is a partnership of citizens and businesses who all live, work, and play across the entire DC region, including the great state of Maryland. It's part of why I'm here today. And then also you heard the testimony from Mr. McAndrew about Virginia's implementation of this process. And I think, it's an old adage in transportation, there's always a greater need than funding available. So prioritization of limited transportation dollars is very important. But as is often the case, sometimes the best intentions can have unintended consequences. And we have seen this with our similar prioritization system in Virginia. One thing that everyone across the state can agree on, urban, rural, different political parties, if you get them in a room talking about transportation, is that the smart scale system is flawed. It always seems to benefit some other part of the region than your own. And part of this is because when you rate projects across so many different categories, all the ones that were laid out here today, many of which are measured and done similar to what we see in Virginia, it creates oftentimes a race to the bottom, where you end up with small projects with small benefits that tend to do better in the rating system because they cost less overall, and the benefit system equalizes everything. So as a result, major roadway and transit projects that require significant investment have struggled to earn funding, especially in high-cost areas like the areas around the DC region. And this proposed legislation also lacks really some of the most important metric, a measure of how many more people will be moved or transported as a result of this transportation improvement that's being considered. With this prioritization applying specifically to capacity expansion projects, that should be a metric that is the priority of what we're evaluating, is how much capacity is expanded, things like increase in peak period person throughput. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here to improve this, but important to prioritize. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stanford. Chris Lawson?
Madam Chair and members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is Chris Lawson. I recently joined the Maryland Transportation Builders and Materials Association after spending 31 years with the Federal Highway Administration, where I worked with states on federal transportation programs and reviewed discretionary programs, including programs like the Prioritization Process Pilot Program, or PPPP. In 2024, Maryland applied for and received a $2 million federal PPPP grant to refine and pilot its updated project prioritization framework. The purpose of the PPP program is to allow states to develop, test, and improve their prioritization processes before institutionalizing them long-term. It supports pilot testing, stakeholder engagement, tool development, and evaluation. In other words, it is designed to refine a framework while it is still evolving. From my federal experience, the strongest processes are transparent, tested, and inclusive before they are written into statute. That means fully engaging local governments, regional planning partners, including the state's metropolitan planning organizations, since they are central to how projects are developed, prioritized, and delivered. MDOT's pilot did not meaningfully engage these partners or show how their input informed the framework. HB 2030 would codify the framework while that federally funded refinement work is still underway and before the full pilot results have been publicly released. A prudent path forward would be to complete the 2024 federally funded refinement, fully engage our local and regional partners, publish the pilot results, and then return for codification once the legislature and stakeholders clearly understand how the framework performs in practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Mr. Sakata.
Thank you, Chair Watson and members of the committee. I'm Mike Sakata, President and CEO of Maryland Transportation Builders and Materials Association. I also serve on the Transportation Revenue Infrastructure Needs Commission. We supported updating Chapter 30 with clearer metrics and greater transparency. That was and remains the right goal. We expected any revised framework to come back for review before being written into statute. The commission was disbanded, as we know, before that could happen. So the responsibility now rests with this committee. We've been told that there roughly 50 projects were evaluated under this unfunded pilot of the new scoring system. Yet the project lists, scores, comparison to Chapter 30 have not been released publicly. At the same time, MDOT has programmed about $10 million in the CTP for feasibility studies. Before codifying this framework, policymakers, public, should understand how it really affects those investments and the real project outcomes. The governor has said the days of no and slow are over, and the days of yes and now are here. If that is our shared goal, which it is, this framework should accelerate project delivery, not add another statutory step before construction. HB 230 ties scoring to benefits relative to cost to the state. That may be reasonable policy, but it will favor jurisdictions able to reduce the state's share through a local match. We should be clear about how that impacts rural and fiscally constrained counties before putting it into law. Once enacted, obviously you will know, changes require legislation. The request is simple. Complete the federally funded refinement, publish the pilot data, return with a fully defined process so that everyone understands what they're voting on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sakata. We have one more witness who is virtual, and that is Martin Harris. Are you with us, Mr. Harris?
Return with a fully defined process so that everyone understands what they're voting on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sakata. We have one more witness who is virtual, and that is Martin Harris.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Again, I'm Martin Harris. I'm the Director of the Department of Public Works here in Charles County, here in support of HB 230. A lot of my colleagues from local government have already sort of talked about some of the mechanisms that got us here to this point. But I do want to point out a couple of things. One of the things that was mentioned earlier was that there was a bill submitted last year that was also striving to increase our clarity and transparency and increase the understanding of the process. I supported that bill last year, but it was a complex bill and it did raise some questions. One of which Mr. Weisberg pointed out, referring to studies and some of the other things at the front end. To address these things, I and a bunch of my colleagues spent a fairly robust chunk of the interim coordinating with MDOT and working with them on the modifications to the bill that got us here today. And I'm happy to say that I do support the bill in its form. I will say also that one of the most important aspects of this, and this come up in this hearing already, has emphasized the need for a built-in procedure to make sure that we can consistently, constantly review the bill and its implementation, including the results that come out of it. The process is still complex, as it's necessary to be so, because this is not an easy thing to do. I'd say it's quite frankly nigh unto impossible for all the differing needs, goals, and objectives, geographies, compositions, densities, to result in one specific formula that's going to make everybody happy all the time. But just because we can't achieve that perfection does not mean that we should not be active in pursuing improvements. And that's exactly what I think HB 230 does. It is a much stronger positive step towards everybody getting a full understanding of how the transportation prioritization process works, and it still preserves the CTP. So while I think perfection is not attainable, HB 230 does a heck of a lot of good to bring that increased clarity that we're needing. And MDOT is clearly listening to us at the local level and trying to refine the bill and put in measures that will allow it to continue to be made better. So with that, I really strongly request that the committee give HB 230 a favorable report. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. That is the last of our witnesses, and that concludes our bill hearing on this bill and for the bill hearing for the one question. I'm sorry. Delegate Acevero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. You all are saying that I'm sorry. Can you repeat? I guess what amendments would you all like to see as far as this? The gentleman in the middle had mentioned it, but
myself
right now. So what is
Jason?
it?
Sorry.
Yes, in the blue suit.
No, and I appreciate that. I think one of the things that, again, because we have a very similar process here in Virginia, adding an additional component, we call it congestion relief. But if you actually look at how it's measured when we do congestion, we do the increase in peak period person throughput. We make that a priority factor because it's actually measuring how you're moving more people across your region. You guys have mentioned 5 or 6 other things that are being prioritized and how those are measured. None of those things actually measure how many more people does this transportation improvement move. And so I noticed that's something that we at least have in Virginia, and I noticed it wasn't in this one. And I thought, given that it's a transportation project and looking specifically at capacity improvements, that you would want to make sure you have a metric that focuses and prioritizes that.
Got it. And just one quick follow-up to the gentleman in the very nice yellow bow tie on the end. You had mentioned around just like the importance of road construction and roads to our overall, transportation goals. And I don't disagree. I guess, from my previous comments to the Assistant Secretary, I've been around long enough to remember, again, when Hogan's first term, he had diverted billions of dollars in what would have been for transportation funds, transit, that's also needed. I believe the amount, it was $2.9 billion that was initially allocated for the Baltimore rail system, and had then diverted that towards road projects, $58 million for interchange, $23.5 million in roads, et cetera. And a majority of those roads tended to be next to his properties, his personal, privately owned properties from his real estate firm. Now, I don't think that's what you're suggesting, that we don't have a process where we can sort of determine, whether it's road projects in the future, that, this is needed by the local community, et cetera, as opposed to just some sort of an arbitrary decision that we're going to build this road, build this interchange, and it just so happens to be next to my properties. That's not what you're suggesting, are you?
No, sir. My focus right now is prefer we move forward with a transparent and data-driven process that folks can agree on, which we haven't reached that yet. But my main focus for my members and for I kind of speak for the roads and the pavements in Maryland, we're not investing enough to keep them in state of good repair. And when we're not focused on system preservation, capacity doesn't matter. We won't be able to maintain our existing roadways, and that's where my focus is right now.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Members, if you wouldn't mind, just one additional question that I wanted to ask, and then we'll wrap up. Questions for Mr. Sakata, if you could, within 60 to 90 seconds, give us a response to this. I believe your stance essentially on the bill is that this new process lacks research, revision, and independent verification, and that it could disadvantage traditional surface capacity projects. Can you give us your, specific reasons why you believe that to be the potential outcome, so that, we are fully informed of your position?
Well, thank you. I guess the issue to me is when you look at the system preservation, and so just to be clear, can you repeat your question one more time? I was so focused on the 60 to 90 seconds, I left everything out. Sorry.
Okay. So essentially, it's my understanding your position is that the new system could disadvantage traditional surface capacity projects. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that there needs to be more research?
Absolutely, and I think—
Can you tell us the basis behind that in 60 to 90 seconds?
Yeah, so HB 230 does not eliminate preservation projects. Projects that are purely for preservation or state of good repair are excluded from the scoring requirement. The changes in how other projects are evaluated. So essentially, the bill replaces old detailed scoring measures with broader policy goals of we've heard safety, mobility, climate, equity, economic development, all those things. So but essentially the concern here is that many projects combine preservation with operational or capacity improvements. When I'm redoing a road, when the SHU's doing, they will add a capacity improvement. So that now falls under that. So once they fall into that scoring system, they must compete based on measurable improvements. Preservation obviously prevents things from getting worse. It doesn't always produce new measurable gains. So the structure will change how those blended preservation projects compete unless that priority is clearly protected.
All right. Unless there are any other questions, that ends this bill hearing, and I believe ends our bill hearings for the day. Thank you all very much for your attendance.